What a fascinating and overlooked part of history. I can tell you right now, nobody in Mesoamerica liked the Aztecs. The Spaniards were shocked at how barbaric the Aztecs were. Essentially said that their civilization was absolutely demonic. So this is the blueprint for the Aztecs. You're crippling the guy that you're fighting, and then you're gonna tie him up, pull him to the top of the pyramid, rip his heart out, and sacrifice him to the war god or the sun god or the rain god. But the Aztecs were also shocked that the Spaniards, their style of warfare was complete total war. Just slaughtered people in the marketplace. This is like just the momentum of civilization moving forward. Exactly the same thing was happening in the Americas. You think of the Wild West, your only lot in life is like, I hear about this place over in California, there's lots of gold out there, having absolutely no idea that there are Comanches rolling around the plains that will scalp you and torture you to death and burn you alive just 160 years ago. Think about that. And what's really crazy is right at the beginning of their civilization, how did the Olmecs transport these heads? Aliens. I find myself studying ancient people and I see the bizarre things that they come up with and the things that they believe, and I actually have to agree with you. What is actually the answer to this?
Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you have not already, can you do me a huge favor and please hit that subscribe button real quick? That is the most important metric we get on any of these videos, and I haven't been doing a good enough job reminding people to do that. So if you can take 1 second and do that, they will start showing our videos in the algorithm and we'll be able to continue growing the show. Thank you as always, and enjoy the episode. Caverns, how's your stay been at Hotel Julian?
It's been great, man.
Yeah?
Thank you so much.
You got all your accommodations, everything necessary?
I've got everything necessary. I've got the nice massage chair. I'm living large.
Massage chair, not illegal masseuse. Just want to be clear about that. We're not, no Diddy around here.
No Diddy. Yeah.
That's right.
So
can you say that now, or am I going to get sued for saying that? He is a convicted felon. All right, so we're good saying no Diddy. All right, yeah.
So, yeah, I've been enjoying it, man. I actually got to see more of the city this time around.
I was going to say, you went exploring yesterday before talking with our buddy Marky Gags.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
It's nowhere. I just wandered around 14th Street and checked out a couple stores, and then rode the subway a couple places, checked out a park, checked out some church, and then headed over to Queens.
Very on brand as an explorer. You treated New York City the same way as you treat Cambodia.
Yes.
I love that.
Yep.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Had nowhere in particular I wanted to go. I didn't want to go do all the cheesy trademark stuff because I'm going to do that with my wife at some point. I'll do all the Empire State Building, the Met, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I just kind of wandered around.
All right. Yeah. You writing a book now?
I'm in the process of writing a couple books. There's one that's like my all-time book that I want to write. I can't share the idea of it publicly. But this other one I'm writing right now is on the Olmecs, and I'm going to do like I don't know exactly what I'm going to call it yet. I was just going to make it the Olmec Enigma or something like Colossal Heads. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I want to do a history of ancient Mesoamerica, and I want to do a book just on the Olmecs, and because I feel like they deserve their own topic, or their own book, and then I want to do a book called Lost Cities of the Snake God, and that basically goes from the Maya to the Aztecs, and then I might do a third follow-up at some point. Like I think I'll do it 3 years back to back to back.
Wait, you're gonna call it Lost Cities of the was it?
Of the Snake God. Yeah, because you have the feathered serpent. That's like one of the trademark gods of Mesoamerica.
Have you trademarked that yet?
No.
You got to do that. That's hard as f. Someone's gonna steal that.
Yeah. I know. Well, that's why I can't steal. Or that's why I can't publicly say the book I want to write.
Okay.
Yeah, the one I was telling you about a minute ago. So,
the other one. With that. I think that title's been taken, though. That's the thing. The one you told me outside.
You think so?
I mean, I know so. There's been feature films made called that. We could do better than that, too. That other one you have.
Yeah. Lost
Cities, the Snake God.
Yeah.
Hard as f.
Yeah,
All right, I'm buying that. I don't even know what it's about. I'm buying it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good.
So
what's the third one? The untitled one?
I haven't figured it out, but it's essentially going to be the conquest of Mexico. So it's gonna begin so right at the end of Mesoamerican pre-Columbian history, the Aztecs are planning a final assault on the Maya world in the Yucatan. And the next day is when Cortez shows up. And basically, it's like two unstoppable forces meeting each other, the Aztec Empire and the conquistadors. And I want to write a book that starts there and goes for maybe like the next 150 years or so. So like a 3-part history of ancient Mexico and Central America.
Let's dig into that. What happened there? Let's do a little preview of the book, if you will, here. So Cortez comes in. For people not familiar, you can explain exactly what the tete-a-tete with the Aztecs were there, but how many guys did he come in with? What was the disease that happened afterwards? And then how did civilization settle over the next basically 6-7 generations?
Yeah. The only other thing I may do is I may just make it a 2-parter where I start off with the Olmecs, because the Olmecs need their own book. There's no book out there that's just really dedicated to the Olmecs that's accessible for just history fans. You know? And then I may follow that up with a single book, which is Lost Cities of the Snake God. And that one maybe includes the fall of Mexico in it, like the second half of the book. But well, should I start? Do you think I should start with the Olmecs, or do you want me to say?
We'll come back to the Olmecs, the Aztecs. I've been waiting to do that, so let's do it.
Yeah. Where do you want to start with the Aztecs? Like, what do you?
Well, you know what? Actually, a little exposition would be good. So if we have like Tenochtitlan and everything before Cortez gets there, just what it was like, where it was located, to show people the scene, and then we can get to Cortez, and you go wherever you want to go, my friend.
So Tenochtitlan. This is something that I think a lot of people don't realize is, the Aztecs are so synonymous with Mexican history, but the Aztecs are and are not Mexican at all. Nowadays, they have been totally absorbed into the Mexican world, especially the modern Mexican world. But the Aztecs came from further north than the Mexican Valley, maybe not even Mexico at all, possibly north of the Rio Grande up into New Mexico, Nevada, maybe even Utah. We don't exactly know where they came from, but they came down from far north in a place called Aztlan, and they say that they came from like these caves of Aztlan, and that's their homeland. And that's not just a legend. They had these codexes, which are these long pieces of paper. So a codex is essentially it's analogous to papyrus. So you've seen the papyrus scroll, they roll it up. Well, the difference is in Mesoamerica, a codex is like, have you ever had those sticky notes that are folded like accordions? Where they're connected on each opposite side? Yeah. So that's a codex. That's what a codex is. And so you would read it like this and then flip it over and read it the other way like a book. So the Aztecs had these codices, and they essentially tell their origin story in it, that they came from this lost place called Aztlan. They were essentially kicked out of it. And we think that they were kicked out of it for the same reason that they were kind of getting kicked around the Valley of Mexico when they came down, because they were such a violent, savage, barbaric, unamicable society that couldn't get along with anybody. And that's pretty much their history, is that living next to the Aztecs is like constantly brushing up against sandpaper. Like it's impossible to live around these people. And so we know that when they migrate down from somewhere north of the Rio Grande, they find the Mexican Valley. And
what approximate year do you think they did that?
Okay. So this is probably sometime around 1100 or 1200.
Okay. So
800, 900 years ago.
They have a buttress of 300 years before Cortez, 400 years, somewhere in that area.
Yep. Yeah. So that's when they arrive in the Mexican Valley. And, it's not hard to see why this is a place that they would have loved. So they came from the American Southwest, which is just desert. This is the land of the cliff dwellers and very arid environments. And as soon as you hit the Valley of Mexico, well, it's just a beautiful highland mountains, cool, crisp air, fertile valleys. You can grow anything. There's, it's the Valley of Mexico is where corn was first grown, like maize. It's just an extremely fertile, extremely wealthy place, and was wealthy long before the Aztecs ever arrived. Like, have you ever heard of Teotihuacán, the Pyramid of the Sun, the Moon, the Temple of Quetzalcoatl?
You talked to me about that the first time you were in here.
Okay, was
Episodes 177.
Or did I? Yeah. So that was a great empire that existed about 1,000 years before the Aztecs ever arrived in the Valley of Mexico. So the Aztecs found that city Teotihuacán, and it had been abandoned for 1,000 years by the time the Aztecs showed up.
What was the surrounding geography like there?
It's mountainous. It's like a arid. It's like arid mountains, but yet the closer you get to the rivers, the more fertile it is. So you have a lot of there's a lot of agriculture there. It's a
Dave's got it. Boom.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. This photo was probably taken in the winter, so everything's a little bit more dead.
That step pyramid looks like the one in Apocalypto when they were throwing the bodies down it.
Yep.
Very similar.
Yeah. So this was the Empire of Teotihuacan, which was a civilization that flourished in the area of north of modern-day Mexico City about 1,000 years before the Aztecs arrived. So when the Aztecs get there, they they see the wealth that's here. They see why people would want to live here, and then they want to live there as well. And so they're kind of orbiting around the Valley of Mexico, where you have multiple different tribes and kingdoms who are already there that are now living in the shadow of the pyramids of Teotihuacan. They know what happened in those imperial times 1,000 years ago. They know about all the war that happened between the Valley of Mexico and the Maya, and they're all getting along with each other relatively amicably. And so the Aztecs are a pretty savage and violent group of people. And so they're constantly getting brushed out by these other tribes that are already living in the Valley of Mexico. And they're just kicking them out. And they probably orbit around this valley for several decades, maybe 50 years or so. I mean, from what we think. And eventually they approach the city of Calhuacan. And so the kingdom of Calhuacan, they eventually, the Aztecs tell them, we're our people, at least we think. They make some kind of agreement, and probably what it is the Aztecs are coming to them saying, listen, our people are...
Someone's not okay out there, but keep going.
So the Aztecs come to them and say, listen, our people are starving. We don't have a place to settle down. We have nothing. Please let us work for you. Let us do something for you. We'll be mercenaries for you. We'll be soldiers and warriors for you. And so the Calhuacan, royalty probably gets together and is like, well, yeah, these guys would probably make good warriors. Okay, what are we gonna do? We should probably use these guys before someone else uses them against us. So they're like, okay, what can we do? Well, they're good warriors, but they're pretty savage people. They're not going to fit in with our society. So let's hire them as mercenaries, and we'll give them a little plot of land inside of our kingdom or inside of our territory that they can use.
You can fake a lot of things. A headline, an alibi, even a good story. But you know what you can't fake? Good sleep. That's why GhostBed is here, to make sure you get it right. GhostBed's redesigned mattress quiz takes the guesswork out of mattress shopping. Answer a few quick questions about yourself and your sleep style, and you'll get a clear, reliable recommendation in just minutes. You can even take the quiz with your partner. So instead of arguing about who needs to compromise, you can find a bed that works for both of you. GhostBed is a family-owned company backed by more than 20 years of mattress expertise. Every mattress is built with cooling features to keep you comfortable all night and made to last with a 20 to 25-year warranty. And the value is undeniable. GhostBed mattresses cost up to 50% less than comparable brands. Plus, you'll get a 101-night sleep trial and fast free shipping. Most orders arrive in 2 to 5 days, so you could be sleeping better by next week. Right now, as a Julian Dorey listener, you're going to get 25% off your GhostBed order for a limited time. Just go to ghostbed.com/Julian. That link is in my description below, and use promo code Julian at checkout. Once again, that's ghostbed.com/Julian, promo code Julian. Upgrade your sleep with GhostBed, the makers of the coolest beds in the world. Some exclusions apply. See site for details.
So what they do is they're like, okay, well, let's give them this crappy outcropping in the middle of the Lake Texcoco, where there's like, the lake's real shallow. You can walk across some of the stones on it, and there's a rocky outcropping sitting in the middle of the lake. And it's like the worst real estate you can possibly imagine. But the Aztec prophets and the chroniclers had been told by their god Huitztepotli. So, their shamans probably take a psilocybin mushroom or datura or something like that and go into this trance state and speak.
Texcoco.
Yeah, and so they probably speak to they probably speak to Huitztepotli, their god. And
I think I met him when I did ayahuasca.
I
remember that guy.
You may have.
Him and Ben Franklin. Yeah.
Him and Ben Franklin together. Yeah. So
wild combo.
So they're given the prophet, or they're given the great vision of when you see the serpent in the talons of the eagle. That's where you'll know that you're supposed to settle down. It's like our promised land, right? So that's the iconic eagle grabbing the serpent image that we see in Mexico today. Mm-hmm. So the Aztecs are like, okay, well, I guess we're going to go out to this little outcropping in the middle of this lake. So they go out there. Sure enough, there's some water snake on those rocks, and an eagle comes down and swoops down and grabs it and flies off. And they're like, oh, well, this is where we're supposed to be, on this little crappy rocky outcropping. So they start building this little village there on top of the water, and they're bringing more stones in and essentially building up the land and building these little huts on it. And it's like a primitive Venice, right? They're living on top of the water in little huts. And this goes on for 100 to 150 years. And the Aztecs act as Calhuacan's mercenaries, as their warriors. And they make Calhuacan very rich, and they make themselves very rich in the process. And so the Aztec kingdom basically grows up inside the empire of Calhuacan, or Calhuacan is a neighboring kingdom that has dominion over them. And so the Aztecs are getting more and more wealthy from these military expeditions and raids they're doing for Calhuacan. And so after a half a century to a century, the shaman goes into this trance state and meets Huitztepotli, and Huitztepotli tells him, okay, it's now time for our kingdom to be elevated. I want you to send a proposition to go tell the king, to send a proposition to the king of Calhuacan that we will send our Aztec prince to marry the Calhuacan princess and form a dynastic marriage, and tell them that, and probably we just assume that the incentive for Calhuacan to do this was that the Aztecs are getting more powerful. They're obviously very skilled warriors. It's better that we now have a dynastic marriage rather than just a contract.
Right.
Instead of, well, maybe we partner up with these guys now, And so as the Aztecs get more powerful, Calhuacan has this now incentive to be like, okay, this probably makes sense that we officially secure ourselves with a bloodline to the Aztecs and essentially become a fortified nation. And so Calhuacan agrees, and they send a princess over, and they have this wedding. And they get married. They build this palace or we assume that they would have had a palace for the Aztec prince. The princess comes to live in Tenochtitlan, in the middle of this lake. And the shaman goes back into the temple and goes under the datura or psilocybin or peyote, probably peyote, and goes into this trance state. And Huitztepotli has another plan and says, I want you to invite the Calhuacan king back into Tenochtitlan, and we'll have a celebration. And they had something big planned. They wanted to elevate, the Aztec world. This was their overall goal. So the Calhuacan king shows up into Tenochtitlan. They open up the gates. The rest of the royal family is with him. He's there to see his daughter. And rather than seeing his daughter, he sees the prince wearing her skin and dancing around in the middle of the plaza, performing next to her dead corpse. And they had filleted her and cut all of her skin off. And the Aztec prince had slipped inside of her skin and was dancing in it. And so
drag queen filleting.
Yeah, so you can imagine this scene. And so they ambush the Calhuacan king and the rest of the royal family and just eliminate Calhuacan and invade the city and raid it, and then absorb Calhuacan into the Aztec kingdom instead. Except the Aztecs have complete control over Calhuacan. And now the rest of these other neighboring kingdoms and tribes hear about this savage tribe that just a century ago wasn't even allowed to be a part of our civilization, and now they've conquered and completely betrayed the most powerful kingdom here. But I think the short-sightedness that Calhuacan had was, rather than putting the Aztecs out on this crappy piece of real estate, what they actually did was give them a castle in the middle of the largest moat in the entire region, with only one bridge going from the mainland into the city. So now they have an impenetrable city in the middle of the lake Texcoco with all the power of the Mexican Valley.
Do we have any idea how big their civilization is around this time? Like ballpark?
I don't know. I'm gonna guess. I don't know about the Aztecs, but I know the Mexican Valley. Maybe it's 500,000 people ish.
All right, so nothing. Yeah, it's not millions and millions.
Yeah,
or anything
yeah.
like that.
But within 150 years, the Aztec Empire will be about. At least I just read the Conquest of Mexico, which was written in the 1850s, and I think that the estimate was like 10 million. It'll grow to 10 million people.
There were 10 million Aztecs?
Yeah. But that's not necessarily Aztecs. It's people who are living inside the Roman Empire, right? So it's like saying saying there's 100 million Romans. Well,
So
that includes
conquered
Africans
peoples as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Got it.
I
All
don't know the numbers of who are actually Aztec blood-wise.
Right. So a couple things here. Let's start with this. Obviously, we're now including people that they conquered who aren't part of the original Aztec tribe, if you will. But how big of a span, including where the conquered people lived, did the Aztecs have in the Mexican Valley? Was it 300 miles? Was it 500 miles?
Well, it quickly went from just the Mexican Valley, so right around Lake Texcoco. You had these several different kingdoms that were around the lake, and then they are in the center of it. Well, it quickly became all of the Mexican Valley, and then within 100 years, it was everything north of the Valley of Mexico, all the way up to the Chihuahuan Desert. I think all the way to the west to the Pacific coast, all the way down the Pacific coast into southern central Mexico, all the way over to Chiapas, up to Veracruz. Yeah, so it was the vast majority.
Yeah, Deve's on it. Look at that.
So do you see on the right where it says Maya?
Holy, they have the whole middle of the country.
Yeah, and the Aztec Empire was bigger than this. Do you see that? Do you see that river that's just to the left of the Maya? So I think that's the Usumacinta.
The other one?
So you go one more over, one more river to the west of that.
Yep.
That's about where the Aztec Empire ended. Somewhere in there. It's a blurry line because you still have Maya that are living there.
So I'm not going to even try to eyeball square mileage here, but if people are watching this and not listening, you can see it's a large. I mean, a major cartel would be very happy to have all that territory.
Yeah. So it was much larger than this too. It also went further out to the west to those further coastlines. So this is like the smallest version of the Aztec Empire map I've ever seen.
How did they police this? Did they have their own Roman Praetorian guard or something? What was the deal?
My guess, we have some data on this, and I'm not yet an expert on the Aztecs. Like the way I grew up doing this, for the last 6-7 years, is I started with the early Maya, and then I went back to the Olmecs, and then I went forward in time. So now I'm becoming an expert more so in right before the colonial period and then the colonial period. So this is kind of what I'm studying right now. Sorry. Sorry, what'd you ask me?
Yeah, I was asking you about how they policed
Yeah.
this area.
So,
did they have a military or Okay.
Oh yeah.
I imagine they didn't. It probably sounded cooler than that.
No, well they definitely had a military. They had they did planned coordinated strikes and conquest and missions. They had things drawn out in maps. It was full-blown military warfare, in the way that we would imagine it with the Romans and the Greeks fighting, as strategically and methodically thought out as that
Very
was.
similar.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Right. So you have people being sent to, I'm just making something up right now as an example. They have a town somewhere in the west there that's a conquered part of the empire that now is part of the Aztec Empire. Maybe 1,000 people live there.
Yeah.
And they send 3 equivalents of what we might refer to today as a soldier to be there to kind of look over stuff, and people know don't fuck with those
That's
guys.
exactly right. Yeah. So we know so you kind of have these 2 phases of empires that come from the Mexican Valley. And the prototype for the Aztec Empire was Teotihuacán that I was telling you about earlier, that massive city that had been abandoned 1,000 years before the Aztec Empire rises. So Teotihuacán was also an empire 1,000 years before, very similar in many ways to the Aztecs. And when we go to the Maya world, we will find what we call Talud Tablero architecture. So Talud Tablero architecture is just the name of the architectural style. So you'll see an entire city with thousands of buildings that we know, this is Peten architecture. This is, Riobec architecture, X, Y, and Z, Pook architecture. So this looks like this is Peten. This is probably...
What has up here?
Yeah, this is probably Guatemala. So you would go through a city and you'd see a lot of architecture that's very, very similar to this. And then you'll see one building that's in the style of Talud Tablero, and it's very noticeable. Like the facades of the front of the building are just totally different style, while yet still in the same genre. And so, judging by the hieroglyphs and the images and the gods that are depicted on these buildings, we know that these buildings were built by Teotihuacanos that were living in the Maya world, and these were basically ambassador buildings. So when Teotihuacan was taking over the Maya realm, it's not like they invaded a Maya city with a bunch of Teotihuacano people. They just probably killed all of their soldiers, or killed most of them, and then brought their own soldiers in and put them in, and then they had an administrative ambassador building where an important governmental person from Teotihuacan lived in this Maya city and basically made sure everything ran according to the plan of the Teotihuacano emperor.
That's what you got to do. You got to come in, you got to kill the existing soldiers.
Yep.
It's just an administrative hassle.
Yep. And they would allow most of the time the royal family to still exist, but they'd kill the king and replace the king with a Teotihuacano son.
How does that even work then? How does it still exist if you cut off the head of the snake? There's no royal bloodline.
Well, yeah. So it's kind of like, okay. So there's a city called Copan. It's in Honduras. It's the farthest Maya city that you can get from the Mexican Valley, the farthest major Maya city. And there's a stele there where we can see the lineages of the Maya kings. And then I forget the last king, but he ends, and the next king that shows up on a stele is a man that looks completely different than we've ever seen before, and his name glyph is a Teotihuacano name. So he becomes the new king all of a sudden, and he marries a Maya woman, and they have this dynastic marriage that now so it's like Teotihuacan took over Copan, killed the king, and then had one of the daughters there marry his own son. So now his son is the king of Copan, right? So it's subsidiary.
Backdoored it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, it's undetectable, but they probably just replaced all the soldiers with their own soldiers, and something like this. So this is the blueprint for the Aztecs. The Aztecs just fit right into. They just do exactly the same thing, and then sweep across the Mesoamerican world.
This is not, but that's what's crazy. They didn't even come, as you were pointing out, they didn't even come down to Mexico until 1100, 1150, 1200. Mm-hmm. And they're able to build that large swath of land. Again, this isn't like in the modern day where things move faster because there's more means of technology and intercommunication, all that. They build that big of a swath of an empire within basically like 200 or 300 years.
Yeah, it's
which
amazing.
I know that's a long time, but again, back then, like lack of resources, crazy they were able to do that. And all different kinds of terrains there as well. You got to think about fighting the geography.
Oh, it's crazy.
And yet they turn into this 10 million strong empire basically over there by the time Cortez comes around. Yeah. Now, part of the problem is, and I could ask this question about every empire that's ever existed that conquers people, so it's relevant to all of them, but it's relevant here again. How do you develop pure loyalty when you conquer all these people who technically are then pulled into your empire, but they're not a part of your culture by blood, such that when someone, I don't even know if this is relevant to Cortez, but just bear with me here, someone like Cortez comes in, a lot of those 10 million people, basically 9.5 million of them don't even want to fight for it because they're like, whatever. All right,
it's
another
totally
ruler,
relevant,
right?
It's utterly, completely relevant. Cortez arrives, and the reason that the Aztecs fell is because so many of the tribes turned against the Aztecs and helped Cortez. So Cortez essentially divided and conquered Mexico. He got everyone to turn against the Aztecs because the Aztecs are anything but Mesoamerican. I mean, they're not. We see them as synonymous with Mesoamerica. They're incredibly important to Mesoamerican history as a whole. But I can tell you right now, nobody in Mesoamerica liked the Aztecs. They came from the north. They are invaders, just like the Spanish were. They invaded ancient Mexico or ancient Mesoamerica and completely flipped it on its head. Their style of warfare, the brutality, the way that they conquered was inherently different than the way that things had been run in Mesoamerica previously. And it was just much more brutal and much more vicious. Warfare in Mesoamerica previously, for thousands of years previously, was vicious, but it wasn't necessarily imperial. The only example of that is Teotihuacán, and Teotihuacán fell from inside itself in around the year 500 AD and never rose again. All of the other wars were not really imperial. The Maya were not imperial people. The Zapotecs were not. Veracruz culture was not imperial. They just didn't view the world in that way. And so the Aztecs were very much alien to the Mesoamerican world. And so when Cortez showed up, everybody else that was already native to Mexico instantly turned on the Aztecs and helped the conquistadors plot against them and fight against them.
Before we go to that whole history and how that went down, what at their peak, which is essentially like right before Cortez comes.
Their peak is 1519.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at their peak, what did their economy look like, and what did their social class structure look like?
Oh gosh, this is kind of beyond something that I can answer as far as the Aztecs. Like if it were the Maya, I could answer this very easily.
That's why I like you, Luke. You're willing to say I don't know instead of making shit up. That's great.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
My guess would be, they have an empire that runs out of Tenochtitlan, and everything else in Mexico is actually running just like normal. Again, it's not like they replaced the city of Cholula, which is just another site in the Mexican Valley. It's not like they replaced the city of Cholula with all new Aztec people and totally changed the fabric of society. You had your different levels. So you have, at least from what we can tell, right? Like we don't have a document that tells us exactly how Mesoamerican society was run. The way that we know is, so you and I were walking down the street the other day, and I said, in ancient times, people would cover up the buildings with stucco. You remember that?
Yeah, that was
because the brickwork was kind of ugly in the ancient world. So they would flatten it out with white stucco, and then they would paint on it. And those paintings represented everyday life. So sometimes you get like a depiction of a market, or you get a depiction of a marketplace, dynastic people or royal family interacting with normal people. So judging by that artwork, we can infer a lot about their society. So what does Mesoamerican society look like? Kind of anywhere else in the ancient world, like probably very similar to Rome. I mean, you have people that are just at like subsistence level that are barely making it by. However, I should say, money did not exist. There's no currency. It's all
trading like chickens and shit.
Yeah, it's just trade. So like, trade for trade, my material for your material. There is no concept of money. And what's funny is that as appalled as the Spaniards were at many of the behaviors of the Aztecs, like the thousands of people that the Aztecs were suffering and the way that they would torture people, the Aztecs were just shocked at how barbaric and vicious it was. I'm sorry, the Spaniards were shocked at how barbaric the Aztecs were, but the Aztecs were shocked at, they could not comprehend the Spanish lust for gold. It was just like a completely, utterly different society. They did not value gold and material like this in a monetary way. They clearly knew that gold was important, but having gold didn't necessarily make you rich. The thing that made you rich was your bloodline. That's it. That's the only way.
Well, if they don't have money and they're just trading, is it essentially, there's some people just dying out there today. There's some shit going on. I don't know if like those are like pro-Aztec people that are upset what we're talking about, but I swear to God the door's locked, so I think we're good.
The Aztecs are, this is a very,
I love how I just ran with that.
This is a very controversial topic. So
I'm learning that.
People can be upset about the Aztecs.
That's okay. That's what the comment section is there for.
It's very close to heart, and there's a lot of like Latino, Mexican people that have Aztec blood, and a lot of people feel very strongly about the Aztecs, and they're as polarizing today as they were then, right? Because the Spaniards essentially said that their civilization was absolutely demonic. Like even the Daily Wire came out with a video where they're calling the Aztecs demonic.
Demonic.
Yeah. So they're calling them demonic because of the people that they were sacrificing. But it's really a lack of.
That's Rich from Ben Shapiro. Neither here nor there.
It's really a lack of an in-depth understanding of the Aztec world and the nuances of it. Yeah, they were probably. This is why I always think it's funny. At the same time, I see this from both sides. You know, there are people that go, well, you know, the Spaniards saying that the Aztecs were sacrificing 80,000 people a day and, you know, ripping their hearts out and throwing them off the top of the pyramids. You know, that has to be an exaggeration. I'm like, oh, are they exaggerating by 80,000 people? Like, if they're exaggerating, how many was it? 40,000?
Right.
You know? And so
it's like when people argue over like atrocities today. There were only 40,000. Not 80. It's like, well, wait a minute. Pretty sure that's not good.
So that's kind of the Aztec world. But you know, most people only know the Aztecs for their vicious, savage side, of which they were. You know, they got everything that was coming to them. You know, the Spaniards was like the universe's answer to the Aztecs, right? It just they got what was coming to them. I can't sugarcoat that anymore, but also they had a lot of interesting parts of their society. Like the first Spaniards to see Tenochtitlan in, I think it was early 1520, they describe it as being the most impressive thing that they've ever seen. That the city was absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful and perfect and pristine and clean.
What
and
made
that
it
the people
that
were
way
so
to them?
nice. Okay. There were all kinds of things about the city that you would never expect. Like when you think of an ancient Mesoamerican city, you imagine. Look up Tenochtitlan reconstruction, if you would. And there are modern day reconstructions of it that really give you an idea how beautiful it was. Now this is a Spanish recreation of the city. So you can see it's sitting in the middle of this lake, but wait till you see these new 3D reconstructions. It's sick, man.
It's amazing that they were able to build something like that. I mean, again, you can say the same shit about like Venice too.
Check that out.
That people can even rebuild that. That's a reconstruction right there?
Yeah. So it's a digital reconstruction of what it would have looked like based on archaeological data. Yeah, it's beautiful.
That looks like a Biza in the middle of the fucking Colorado Rockies.
Tell me that doesn't look amazing. So the Spaniards had never seen anything like this. They said it was more beautiful than any city that they'd seen in Spain.
How do you even militarily conquer something like that? It's quite literally fortified. I'm just thinking in like older terms. Well, now there's technology.
You know what's crazy is this is a great mystery about the Aztecs is that Moctezuma knew that the Spaniards were marching through Mexico trying to find him. Because they had heard the name, the Spaniards had heard of Moctezuma, they'd heard of the Aztecs, they knew the city Tenochtitlan, they were looking for it. And Moctezuma knew that Cortés was headed for him, and rather than just meeting Cortés head on and going straight to war with him, Moctezuma invited Cortés into the palace and let all, I think roughly 150 Spaniards into the heart of Tenochtitlan, where they took Moctezuma captive in his own palace. And that we don't exactly know how Moctezuma died in that palace, but it was like he just opened up the gates and let him in.
Listen, it didn't work out how it was supposed to because something got fucked up. But Montezuma, and I know this, I have a really good source on this. He was a huge fan of The Godfather, and rule number 1 is keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. He was just, he was 3D chessing them.
He was trying,
and then he got a little 4D, and
he did, yeah.
That's what happened.
And the Spaniards, man, this is with the Aztec Empire and the Inca Empire, they just conquer it like immediately, like it was nothing. It's one of the most bizarre things of Mesoamerica because a lot of people, again, this is kind of, I guess this has sort of become my purpose is to popularize pre-Columbian history and like help people understand more of the nuances because they look at the Native American world as like primitive and vastly inferior to the Europeans because of how easily Europeans seem to have conquered Mexico. That couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I mean, when the Maya tried to go to war against the Spaniards could barely conquer the Maya. They just couldn't do it. And the Aztecs were far superior warriors with much more numbers and were much more sophisticated at that same time or contemporaneously. And anyways, yeah, Cortez just essentially gets invited into the palace in Tenochtitlan, and they're sitting there in the middle of the city. They take Moctezuma captive and essentially put the entire Aztec empire on hold. And nobody knows exactly what happened to Moctezuma in that temple. I think there's 3 different theories as to what happened. One, he was strangled to death and he was killed or something, and the Aztecs later found his body in the temple. 2, he was strangled to death or killed, and the Spaniards threw his body over the side of the walls, like out into the street. Or 3, they convinced Moctezuma to become a spokesperson for the Spaniards, right? To like, essentially, he would be like a puppet emperor, right? On behalf of the Spaniards. And then the Aztecs were so pissed off that they stoned Moctezuma to death.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
In response. So those are the 3 stories that we get from the Spaniards. So obviously conflicting details.
No one
there.
knows what happened.
Nobody knows exactly what happened to him. But long story short, the Spaniards are in the middle of Tenochtitlan, in the palace, in the giant plaza center that you see there, surrounded by millions of Aztecs. And they've got themselves fortified inside the palace. Of course, the Spaniards are covered in armor. They have swords. You know, swords are just... So a difference in warfare. The Spaniards, the Aztecs were also shocked that the Spaniards, their style of warfare was complete total war. It wasn't about like extrapolating. It wasn't about subduing you and then taking your materials from you. It was about eliminating your existence. Yeah. Like you and I, most of the time when you get in this is sort of Mesoamerican warfare. It's kind of like a street fight. You're not intending to kill the other person. You just want to subdue them and hurt them really badly and then get what you need out of the situation. Right?
That's what they would do?
That's Mesoamerican war. Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't fly with Europe.
It doesn't fly with Europe.
Let's go.
Yes, exactly. And so they were shocked that, these swords that they have, this is killing people.
Yeah.
They don't even exist anymore. It was just shocking brutality even to the Aztecs. That
the people throwing hearts off the
exactly
off the
right.
stage.
It's crazy, right? Yeah,
it doesn't make sense
because it's a completely alien world to us. They even gave their enemy's death significance because they would have something called the Macawi, which was a club that had razor sharp obsidian edges on the end, and so they would also have like a wooden shield. And so when they would run at each other in battle, you would try to hit each other with this bat with these razor edges, and you essentially wanted to cripple the guy and then tie him up.
That's what they would use?
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
So
That's better than a Louisville.
It's cool, right? And so you those obsidian. So there's nothing sharper than obsidian, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say but this takes like a little bit of the work out of it though too. Mm-hmm. Like one blow, I mean, you're crunching bones.
Oh yeah.
Whereas with a Louisville, it's more personal. You gotta take a couple hacks at it. You feel the crack.
Like Inglourious Bastards.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done this before. I've just I've heard it. From a lot of people.
Yeah. Italian from Jersey, sure you haven't.
Listen, I keep the bat in the car. I didn't say we use it. It's just there as a, when you need a bat.
So they go to war with these things.
He knows that's true. Go ahead.
they go to war with these things, and you're essentially breaking each other's arms and legs. You're crippling the guy that you're fighting, and then you're going to tie him up, drag him back to the city center, pull him to the top of the pyramid, and then rip his heart out and sacrifice him to, the war god or the sun god or the rain god. But you even give your enemy's death a sense of significance, right? Like every living thing has a sense of significance, even if they're your enemy, even to the Aztecs, right? Europe, like, dude, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Their whole the Spaniards just slaughtered people in the marketplace. Like even in Tenochtitlan, they slaughtered 3,000 men, women, and children with iron swords. And
how did they?
It's just a total war. It was shocking even to Mesoamericans.
Can we back up for 1 second? How to review the history? How did they even first find out about this? How did they end up on the western? I think they started on the western coast or eastern coast.
Eastern coast, yeah,
I'm sorry, eastern coast of Mexico, and then get information that like Montezuma existed, Tenochtitlan, like you mentioned, 1520, the first guy goes there. But like, what? Take me into that 5-7 years leading up to that culminates with Cortez going in there, and we don't know what happened in that building, but Montezuma dies.
So obviously, 1492, Columbus thinks that he finds India or the Indies, but really he lands in the Bahamas. And there are 4 expeditions in total, and they essentially inhabit a large part of the Caribbean, Hispaniola, which Jamaica, Cuba, et cetera, et cetera. So they largely inhabit these regions, and they are sending out other expeditions kind of going around the coast of North America, poking around on Florida, trying to go around the coast of Texas, or sailing along, the North America down the Mexican coast. They're even poking around to the Yucatan. They're even poking around to the Yucatan, down to Belize. They're sailing around trying to just get a grasp without actually going on the land of what this landmass is in front of them. There's even a guy who gets lost to history, and man, I forgot his name too. I wish I remembered it for him.
He really got lost.
Yeah, he really got lost. Dang, sorry.
Fucking old Indiana Jones over here couldn't find him.
Yeah, sorry, dude. But
what years are we talking? Maybe we can Google and find out.
The year 1500, he sailed all the way down to the coast of South America and found the mouth of the Amazon 40 years before Oriana did.
I was going to say, Oriana was the one that gets the credit for it.
No, this other dude did it. And
who found the Amazon before Oriana? Pedro Alvarez Cabral?
Yep, Cabral.
There's a lot of syllables there. We got to shorten that
Pedro
up.
Alvarez. I'll just call him Pedro Alvarez.
Yeah,
it sounds
we'll give
more
him a stage
romantic
name.
So, Pedro Alvarez, he found it in the year 1500, 40 years before we give Oriana credit. So, I mean, dude, think about this. This is I'm kind of like getting really into this period, this early exploration period, the Europeans discovering America for themselves and trying to figure out, because, I mean, think about this, dude. Think about how much this interrupted human history.
Oh, yeah.
The Spaniards are sailing to try to find a different trade route to get to India just to be able to get the spices more affordably. And then they discover 2 continents. They discover the other side of the planet.
That is like finding an alien civilization.
Yes, in the middle of the spice trade. It's like it just completely interrupted human history. They just found another planet with other people on it, and now everything changes, right? It's an immeasurably, inconceivably important era of history. You and I were talking about this the other day on our walk, like between the year 1500 and 1700 is such an overlooked part of history.
Yeah, but even right beyond that, I agree 100%. Mm-hmm. But even like if you look more American centric there,
sure.
Which you are, the stuff that you talk about, by the way, with South America, just in general, forget even 15 to 1700, it's so overlooked, period. All of it. Like the history down there is insane. But now if you're looking at the Americas and you focus in on North America a little bit, 15 to 1700 at least, though, we get Jamestown, we get the Pilgrims, we get like a little bit of like things are being built. I would say even beyond that, when you get into like the years leading up to the French and Indian War and then the French and Indian War before the Revolution, that shit is insane. Mm-hmm. And we live here, and we don't even talk about it. Yeah. I don't know what they don't even make movies on it. They barely make movies on the Revolutionary War. That war was fucking nuts, bro. Yeah. There's a lot of movies in that war, but like the French and Indian War. I mean, if you've seen the movie The Patriot, where like Benjamin Martin, Mel Gibson's always being said, "Oh, you're the guy from the swamp," and he's like running away from it, and his son finally asks him about it. And he's like, "We took our time. We parsed them up. It was what was left of them. We sent it back, and eyes in the boxes, hands in the, and you're like, wait a second." It's based, that's not like a real event, but that's based on the kind of shit that was happening, man. Crazy.
Yeah, I'm getting dangerously close to diving into that post-colonial world because, man, there's so much history there that needs to be talked about. Like, and what really inspired me is what we were talking about a minute ago was Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, that's the very end of the Native American world. man, there's so many important stories,
dude,
during that time period. So much, man. That's one story of hundreds across 100%. The Americas. It's a fascinating period.
We had David Grant, who wrote the book that became the movie, sitting right there. And obviously, for people who aren't familiar, didn't see the Scorsese, De Niro, DiCaprio film of it, or didn't read the book, you know, this is taking place in the earlier part of the 20th century. And like you said, back end of some of these stories. But, you know, he got emotional, David, talking about it. And these are people who died 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just that heavy. Like, it's like this. Sometimes I feel like we overuse this example, but you know how, like, when you were watching True Detective season 1, the setting was really a main character, along with McConaughey
for sure.
And Woody Harrelson. It's like you could feel the soul of that setting, the dark underbelly that existed in this, you know, swampland. And there's a similar in the plainland type thing that still exists there and hangs over, literally, in the fact that there are people who are related to both sides of it. In that story, it's white settlers killing Native Americans. There's people whose bloodlines go back to both.
Yeah,
which is just like,
it's crazy. What I've been reading lately, we were talking about this, was I'm halfway through Empire of the Summer Moon. And man, I'm just getting fascinated with this.
That's S.G. Gwynn, right?
Yeah. With this American history of, you know, because people, it gets so oversimplified. You know, we look at it as like, oh, these are colonial people that are evil and taking over the Americas and taking it away from the natives. It's like, you know what? No, this is actually the momentum of civilization, and nobody was going to stop it. Nobody. The Spaniards that came over and the conquistadors, you know, people vilify the conquistadors, but these were actually poor, impoverished Spaniards whose only lot in life was either to sit and rot away in the slums of Spain, or jump on a ship and go participate in this conquest, of which they couldn't anticipate what would actually happen in the conquest, or who they would meet, or what they would take part in. And then all of a sudden you're there, you're fighting for your life. That's it. They exactly the same thing was happening in the Americas. Yeah, there are decision makers, there are people involved in the government that were doing things that they knew were atrocities, but it's, if you don't do it, someone else will. This is like just the momentum of the game of civilization moving forward, and there's winners and losers. And it always happens that way. It was happening in the Americas before the Europeans ever even got here, clearly, as we were talking about with the Aztecs. And I'm just fascinated by this, what was the show, American Primeval? You have this bundle. You're taking the words out of my mouth. You have this bundle of people that are just thrown into the Wild West. They were all born there. None of them were responsible for it. You have people who, I'm getting chills talking about it. You get people who, you know, are the son of a Comanche, who's the son of an outlaw, who's, you know, the daughter of a businessman in Baltimore. And then all of a sudden you're all in the Wild West together, just trying to survive in one of the most violent places that's ever existed, and places of complete uncertainty. It's just what a fascinating and overlooked part of history. You know, it's like,
dude, I knew nothing about the Brigham Young and Mormon settlement out there. You know, the one thing I can watch once in a while is like when there's a good limited series, because you know, I don't have time to watch shit.
Agreed.
But like,
yeah.
You know, if I'm sick for a day, I can actually get through that instead of like some fucking 6-season TV show.
Yeah, for sure.
But I was watching the first like 30 minutes of that. I'm like, all right. I love some of the actors in it. So I'm like, all right, it's kind of slow.
American Primeval.
Yeah, kind of slow. Like, come on, get me. And then that first arrow hits in that scene, and you're like,
yeah.
And suddenly, like, you know, I'm pausing it every 10 minutes, like going to Wikipedia, like, is this true? Holy shit, it's true.
Yes, it is.
You know? And it is nuts to me that was only 160 years ago. And there's just this, which people go watch. I really wanted to get the creator Mark Smith in here, but he doesn't really do a podcast, so we asked him, and he didn't want to do it. But Mark would love to have you in. You did an amazing job. Like, the research they put into that to tell this story and show just how destitute, just by the means of waking up every day.
Yeah,
People were
yeah.
just to try to find something, how they had to stick with people to fight not just the terrain and the wild, but the unknowns that they were going to encounter along the way. That could even include like crazy French gypsies. Like you don't even know what you're getting out there.
Yeah.
And they did such a beautiful job showing that in that show. It was very like, I don't know. I haven't heard Taylor Sheridan comment on that show. Obviously, he didn't have to do with that one, but it felt very much like he would have been like, you did
Probably
it, guys.
so.
Nice job.
Probably so. Yeah, man. It's I was so surprised to learn that, like how you said, it's just 160 years ago. Man, that ancient primordial North America still existed 160 years ago. There were, I wouldn't say that we can definitively say there were Native Americans living in North America that didn't know what a white man was, but there definitely were Native Americans living in North America who had never seen a white man 160 years ago. And something I think is so fascinating when we talk about the dangers that people moving west towards California was. So you know the gold rush of the mid 1800s. I never realized this. One of the reasons you needed a wagon train wasn't just for convenience. It was so that you could make it past the Great Plains. Because quite literally, when you leave the woodlands and get into the Great Plains, it is literally an ocean of grass. It's just grass. There's no trees. There's no coverage. There's no protection. That's why they have the tent over the back of the wagon so you can have some protection. They set up tents. But you need that wagon train so everyone can stay together and stay along the same trajectory because there was no trails preserved in the Great Plains. A wagon trail 3 days later, like as the wheels are cutting through the grass, would disappear because the ground was so soft, and if it rained, it's completely gone. So people would emerge from this tree line into an ocean from horizon to horizon, no trees at all, and the only thing out there are roaming tribes of the Great Plains. And so, in the Great Plains, you have this lack of convenience. That Native Americans had. So think about this. So in the woodlands, which would be most of the East Coast, you had a lot of convenience. You had a lot of rivers and you had a lot of wood to use. So you can have a much more sedentary lifestyle. There's more luxury, right? So this is why we have all the mounds on the East Coast, and people were staying put in one place. And when you're able to stay in one place and you're able to farm corn and build up these big pyramids, we call them mounds, but it's a little bit like disrespectful or like downplaying the significance of it. Like these are full-on pyramids. If you saw them in ancient times, you wouldn't even know it wasn't made out of stone. Like that's how monumental these things were. And so it was a much more luxurious, sort of peaceful place, less warfare, less violent tribes. But in the Great Plains, think about this. You have the reason that a lot of those natives were pushed to the Great Plains is because they weren't originally great warriors. Like the Comanches were just getting destroyed by everybody around them until one day they emerged as great warriors because they're pushed out into the Great Plains where it's the worst real estate. So what do they have to do to survive? They have to become the most violent people around. And so in the Great Plains, imagine how fierce the natives are that are able to survive in the Great Plains, right? So you have this added element that you can get lost in the plains trying to get to California. And then you also have the most savage Native American tribes roaming around the Great Plains. And this is the thing that I found so shocking, is that the Great Plains Indians were such good navigators and had such a perfect understanding of their geography, of their own territory, that, get this, if you were a large U.S. military convoy moving through Comanche territory in the Great Plains, from Texas, all the way up to Colorado, if you were within a 500-mile radius, you were in danger of being attacked by the Comanches.
500 miles.
They could attack from 500 miles away overnight. Not overnight, but it was like
those some fast fucking horses.
Yeah,
bro.
not overnight, but it was like immediate. Like they could do direct targeted attacks.
They could
within
smell you
500
from 500 miles away.
Yes, yeah. and it
Like
would
literally, like smell you.
no, I don't know, but yeah, that's so it's a big part of S.G. Gwynn's book is that they could plan strategic military attacks from 500 miles away, and that's what made it so hard is because you didn't know how many Comanches there were or where they were at, but they always knew where you were at, and they would never stay in the same place twice. Like they would move from place to place, following their herds of buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And they had herds of wild horses as well. And they could plan strategic military attacks from 500 miles away. And you would never anticipate them coming. And as soon as they attacked, they would disappear. And so you could never get a sense of where they were or when they were coming or where they were coming from. It's just and that's why, like, you think of the Wild West, dude, think about that, being born into that world. And your only lot in life, you have no money on the East Coast. Your only lot in life is like, okay, kids, I hear about this place over in California is what they call it. It's lots of gold out there. We're going to have to do that. Having absolutely no idea that there are Comanches rolling around the plains that will scalp you and torture you to death and burn you alive. You know, it's just a completely wild place. Just 160 years ago. It's just fascinating world, man. So this post-colonial interaction between Native Americans and Europeans, I'm finding it infinitely fascinating because it is the furthest thing from black and white, which is the way people tend to treat it. But man, is it a complicated, like nuanced issue.
Yeah, 1883 is another one that shows that.
I haven't seen it yet.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. Well, you should watch that because there's a lot that you're describing, and the fever dream in my head of picturing these things comes from a lot of the imagery that was filmed in that. I actually liked 1923.
I love that
better.
show, man. I love that show.
It was fucking awesome. 1883 was, we're talking about some of Taylor Sheridan's like pre-Yellowstone limited series. 1883 was pretty amazing, and there's, I don't want to give plot points away to you if you haven't seen it, but you know, they're same kind of idea. They're going down the Oregon Trail, I think that's what it was called, and you're fighting the terrain, like you said, which includes shit that we take for granted, like, oh, we came to a little, 25-meter wide river. People are going to die when we cross this, right? All the way to some of the roaming tribes, and you'd get hunted. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. But we got on this tangent because we were talking about the years leading up to Montezuma actually being killed and the Spanish finding out about him and then working their way east to west inland to get to Tenochtitlan and then eventually, do the deed here. But so they land in the east. You were talking about how they went down. First they were finding the Bahamas. We got on the sidetrack about the guy Alvarez who found Brazil and all that before Oriana.
Yeah, shout out to Alvarez. Man.
Yeah, shout out Alvarez. Sounds like a third baseman, but anyway. So, he finds that, but now we're fast forwarding a little bit to the days of like when Cortez is coming. So Cortez sends people ahead of him, I guess, who go there first. And how were they greeted? Like, I remember there was something, maybe I'm fucking this up and mixing this up with another one, but there were people of the Aztecs who looked at the Spaniards as gods.
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of something that is thrown out there. We really don't know the veracity of a statement like that. The Spaniards seem to say that a lot, like about every encounter that they thought that we were gods. There's a lot of there. I would say it's right down the middle. It's 50-50 as to whether or not any of the Native Americans actually thought that they were gods. Now, I think where this comes from is that there was a prophecy that the great feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl would return one day, and on the exact astronomical day, or at least that year, which for the Gregorian calendar was 1519, to the Aztec calendar, it was exactly that year that Cortez arrived. It's just one of these great coincidences, or is it coincidence? But this is where this idea comes from that all Europeans will say later on they thought that we were gods. We really don't know, but it is possible that the Aztecs really did think that this was the return of Quetzalcoatl. But we just don't really know. And for how long did they think that? We don't really know.
But there's like a 5-6 year period here before they do the deed where they or where it exists.
No, it's just like a year and a half. It's just
No, from awareness that it exists, not getting there, right?
No, it's like 7 months later.
So how did they find out it existed? Did they like come upon it and be like, "What's that shining
Yeah,
city on the hill?"
he lands. So Cortez wants to invade. If I'm getting my history right here, Cortez wants to invade Mexico. He wants to invade mainland Mexico. But he was already kind of on a short leash with the Spanish crown. And so he did not have permission to invade the mainland, but he decided to do it anyways before he was essentially reprimanded and pulled back, and the position was given to a different conquistador, right? So he goes ahead and invades mainland Mexico anyways. So he lands on the coast of Veracruz, and the first people that he meets, as far as we know, are the Maya. And so he meets the Maya, and he says that these are like sickly, small, weak-looking people. Now, what he didn't realize is that these Maya already had European disease from the last 20 years of other Europeans poking around on the Yucatan and trading with them. These Europeans had been infecting the Maya. So the Maya were the first people in Mexico to get infected with this disease, and it was spreading across, and it had reached Veracruz by the time Cortez, 20 years later, came to Veracruz. He meets with the Maya, and he sees some gold artifacts, he sees some riches, and he asks them, he essentially says what all aliens say when he says, "Take me to your leader." So, he hears of Tenochtitlan in 1519 when he first arrives in Veracruz. These Maya people are telling him about the city of Tenochtitlan and the Emperor Montezuma. So it's within 7 to 9 months later, he marches there with the 150 conquistadors and other native guides, essentially people he's paid off, or maybe he's forced them to guide him through and escort him through. So he's kind of got his 150 men, and then he's got his local guides or slaves or soldiers, whatever it is, and they go on this 7-month expedition where they're on horseback and walking from the coast of Veracruz all the way to Tenochtitlan, and yeah, it's 7 or 9 months later. They're at the capital of Mexico, and I believe, in that first meeting, if I'm getting my history wrong, and again, everybody watching, I'm just now getting to colonial history in my own studies, but I believe it's in that first meeting that Moctezuma dies when the Spaniards first arrive, and then the war continues for about another year. The Aztecs essentially replace Moctezuma with their own local leaders, like another guy steps up.
So the Aztecs replace him.
Yeah.
So the Spaniards kill him. War breaks out, and the Aztecs start fighting the Spaniards, and they say, "We have a new leader now."
Essentially, we think that they had already replaced Moctezuma before the Spaniards. So I told you they were held up in that palace before, and I think they were held up in the palace for maybe around 100 days or so, if I'm getting my history right here. And so by the time the Spaniards flee that palace in the middle of the night, they flee in the middle of this storm, and they cover the horses' hooves with these cloths so that on the cobblestones it's not so loud. And of course, they don't make it out undetected. While they're in the middle of the bridge in the middle of the night, the flare and the horn goes up at the front of the bridge, and then it goes off at the back of the bridge, and like a million Aztecs storm these 150 conquistadors, and the conquistadors barely make it out, but they've filled their armor with gold, and everything that they've stolen. And so anyways, we think that during this period, the Aztecs had already replaced Moctezuma with somebody else, because you needed order. So probably, the second or third guy becomes this new emperor. And so the war isn't over with the death of Moctezuma. The Spaniards flee, they barely make it out. Cortez barely makes it out alive. His horse gets killed. It falls over. He falls into the water, and with all of his armor, he's going to sink to the bottom of the lake and drown. And a couple of his men reach in and grab him out while they're being attacked. It's a crazy story. They barely make it out of Tenochtitlan. Eventually, the Aztecs kind of retreat after enough of them get sliced down, and they barely survive. And then the war continues. They come back. They conquer Mexico City, or they conquer Tenochtitlan the next year, and then just completely subdue all of Mexico. And they essentially just turn Tenochtitlan into Mexico City, and then they launch their expedition down into Peru.
How many people? How deep was the Spanish
It was only
army?
It was only 150 guys. I'm pretty sure it was only 150 guys. Yeah.
So it never got above that, though.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think that they came. I imagine that when they came back with the second expedition, it was many more soldiers, plus the help of other indigenous people that now saw that the Aztecs were weakened and wanted them dead too. So this second phase of the war is when we get this period of the Spanish priests giving the Aztec people the blankets that had smallpox in it. You've heard of this, I'm sure.
Tell that story for people.
This is that. Well, I don't know all the details of it. I just know that there were Spanish friars and priests who probably genuinely wanted the betterment. Like, people think that we're talking about biological warfare here.
We want what's best for you.
Take
this smallpox.
It's hard to say, man, because the more I've studied it, back then they have what's the theory of like the four fluids or whatever it was? It was like blood, saliva, pee, something else. They didn't really understand. They didn't really understand virology, germ theory, and so we think, as I've looked more into it, I started off thinking that they knew that they were spreading disease, but I don't think that they did. I think that these priests genuinely cared about the souls of these people and wanted to protect them and comfort them, because there were lots of Spaniards that weren't bad people. There were lots of Spaniards that genuinely cared about the Aztecs or the natives that they're interacting with and wanted the best for them, but ultimately ended up hurting them even more.
You sound like a Spanish apologist.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. No, but that's probably really what was happening. Is they really were giving the women and children these blankets to keep them warm during the winter, without realizing that they had brought these blankets from the Caribbean, surrounded by other Europeans that were breathing all over them and putting all their diseases into these blankets, and then those blankets just decimate people in Mexico City. Just bodies, thousands of bodies piling up in the middle of the markets. It was like the Spaniards are walking through the markets and it's just piles of dead Aztecs everywhere. Now, another similar thing happens here is that there's a Spanish friar down in Peru a decade and a half later, and he's baptizing after Pizarro. Pizarro is a colleague of Cortés. I think he's a cousin or nephew of Cortés. Gets sent down on an expedition to conquer Peru. You and I talked about this on my first episode, where Atahualpa spits on the Bible and throws it on the floor, or throws it on the ground. Yeah. And so there was a Spanish friar there that was trying to baptize the Inca people, and so he had this bowl of holy water. And he had thousands of people putting their face in the bowl of holy water.
Yeah, that's great.
And all he was doing was giving each one of these people, directly giving them the Spanish influenzas and smallpox. And so even though he was the guy trying to save their souls, he himself probably killed more people than any Spaniard ever did.
I'm going to save your soul and send you to God. God damn.
Yeah, man.
What a savage time on every front.
Wild time, man. Wild time. And, I even think about that I used to be, it's funny, my wife, she's cute. I took her to Peru, and I'm talking to her about, we were going through Cusco, and I'm showing her all the Inca temples with these, Spanish churches built over the top of them. And I'm explaining to her, the Spanish church essentially cuts off the power of the temple, because the temples are astronomical observatories that are meant to connect to the sun and the night sky and the stars, and they act as like celestial astronomical clocks. They have a purpose, and by building this building on top of it, you cut off the Inca people from their spirituality, from their source, right? And I was going through all of it with her, and by the end of the trip, she's like, I don't like the Spanish. She's like, she doesn't like the Spanish at all. And the Inca people are just so nice, but it's just funny. But as a historian, it all eats away at you, and you end up realizing that no general group of people are ever as bad as they're portrayed to be. There are individual people that are awful, but the vast majority of people are just caught up in this tsunami of civilization, right?
I wish we would take that lesson today even. People define different groups of people around the world. I mean, you draw it along borders, you draw it along religions, you draw it along races. They'll use anecdotal things to define the whole. and it just repeats itself. History repeats itself over and over again. But I never understand that. You know, there's cultures, there's some ideas that are strongly infested in some cultures that you may be like, all right, I don't love that, but judge people on people. You know, when we look at this history, and that's important why you're given this context as well, so that everyone listening understands. Similarly to today, you know, where we have men in suits go in back rooms and shake hands and drop bombs. You know, maybe they didn't wear suits back then. They didn't have fucking, you know, Hugo Boss and all that. But same idea. Just, you know, a few guys decide this is what it is. And then suddenly you send the pawns out there as they would look at them, which is unfair to describe them that way, but that's how they looked at them, to do the dirty work. And, you know, it could be everything from some savage conquering and war to what you're talking about with, you know, priests saying, I'm going to save your soul and spreading massive disease that kills people. It's brutal, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a fascinating time, man. It's two different worlds disconnected by more than 10,000 years from each other. Completely different worldviews. In some ways similar.
What do you mean in some ways similar?
Just the humanity. You know, okay, so we study the ancient Amazonian people, and what's funny is judging by their archaeology, which thus far we haven't found a lot of the archaeology. We've only found smaller civilizations on the periphery of the Amazon. Like, you know, probably the main hubbub of all these great lost cities in the Amazon we hear about were probably further into the center of the Amazon, where Oriana is said to have seen them, where you have like where you actually have stone bedrock instead of clay, out in the west, like where Paul is at.
Paul Rosley.
Yeah, but on the peripheral of the Amazon, where it's much easier to access, we found all kinds of civilizations out there, and the archaeology that comes up is pretty interesting. The only thing that we find are these raised platforms that essentially come up from these canals, and so you have this farmland, you have these raised platforms, you have these dugout canals that go through the ground. And so from what we think is that a lot of these Amazonians on the periphery of the Amazon didn't necessarily walk from place to place all the time. They get in these little canals and little tiny boats and sail up and down from town to town. But all we find is the archaeological remnants of giant parties. This is kind of similar.
On it.
Yeah, this is pretty similar. This is a LiDAR map that's shown up. Now, this is a larger city that's closer into the interior of the Amazon. It sort of gives you an idea, but it isn't exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you could look up like Amazonian geoglyphs, and you'll probably see a shot. You'll probably see a drone shot from the sky, and that'll be a lot closer. This right here, though, this LiDAR scan, this is like a major city. There's a step pyramid. There's a huge platform in the middle. There's highways coming in.
What's the smaller one over there on the far left that's green? Is that a mini step pyramid?
Yeah, probably a mini step pyramid. So it's got that raised platform, and then it's got a mound up on top of it. So that raised platform, you probably had some normal people setting up their huts, and then those two mounds right next to it, the probably royal people or much more wealthy, important people living up even more elevated.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what do we got on this?
Here we go. Perfect,
that's what you want?
Dude. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So any of these. So
that looks like the movie Signs.
It does, right?
Yeah. Deef was like on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't.
Come on, Mel. Where are you?
We don't understand why they make these geoglyphs and why they made these shapes. What the orientations of them are truly meant for.
They were talking
aliens.
Talking up there, baby.
Could be. You ever seen the Nazca lines?
The Nazca mummies.
No, the lines in the ground. Aw, dude. We're going to have to go down the Nazca.
All right, finish this point, then we're going down the Nazca. That's going in the title. Nazca line aliens, boom. Everyone loves it.
Let's do it.
Cool.
So this is actually similar to the Nazca lines. It's giant geoglyphs that are made into the ground, but essentially people would lived in these raised platforms similar to this, and you can see huge lines spanning off from here, and they're ditches in the ground that'd be filled with water, and people would sail in little boats from one place to the other. And essentially all that ancient Amazonians did was farm and party and go to war and sleep with each other's wives. That's basically it.
Listen, you got to throw that in there.
Yep.
Swinging
so
older than time.
In many, many ways, you look at them and they're like, okay, they They like to have a good time. They like to kill each other, and they like to have sex. Like,
good for them.
Pretty similar to everyone else around the world.
You take out the killing, we're good.
Yeah, and so that's, you know, so much of the Mesoamerican world is so similar to other parts of the world, and yet the way that those pieces interact with each other is just assorted completely differently, right?
What was that one right there I was looking at? Is that a dude drawn into the... You see it in the second row, Deef? Yeah. That's altered, right?
Yeah, I've never seen this one.
That looks like Bigfoot with a club.
Humans probably altered the Amazon 2,000 years ago.
Oh, Paul Rosley's going to have a heart attack. Don't click that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of an overblown thing because people will go, the Amazon's a man-made garden.
Cook, Luke.
No, it
Cook.
isn't.
Let's
the
go.
Amazon's not a man-made garden. This is literally what will happen. You'll be walking through the Amazon, and all of the Amazon has grown to every creature, every plant in the Amazon has grown to defend itself from other things. So it's just a vicious cycle of death in the Amazon. Like, you know, a lot of I'm making generalizations here, but a lot of the plants aren't edible. You know, you got these huge thorns on these trees that are like, you know, thorns that are a foot long and razor thin. You don't even see them until you've run into the tree. It's just the Amazon's an incredibly formidable place that seems like it wouldn't be possible to inhabit. And at some point probably 10,000, 20,000 years ago, ancient Amazonians in this primordial lost, like mystic sea in the ancient world, in this very blurry time, invented a type of soil, a black soil called terra preta. And this soil could grow anything that they needed. And so they made patches of gardens in the Amazon, small little patches. Now, we found a bunch of them, but that doesn't mean that the Amazon looked like the Great Plains and then people planted the forest there. They just re-engineered the soil in certain parts to be able to grow the things that they needed to survive. And so you'll be walking through the Amazon, and then all of a sudden Percy Fawcett did it, but he didn't know what terra preta was. Yeah. He just found these gardens that were full of all the fruits and everything that he needed. Like, his guys would be starving, and they would come across a farm or something like that in the middle of the Amazon that he would say the entire all the vegetation is different with fruit that he'd never seen before, but it looked delicious and it was edible, and his men would gorge themselves on it. And he would just find pockets of this. Well, he was finding gardens. He was finding Amazonian gardens.
Exactly.
And these are like, I'm talking about tiny little, like all these little black spots on your table. That's about how common they would be in the Amazon.
Sure.
The vast majority of it is just natural wilderness that's been there since before the Ice Age.
Yeah, I think most people who say that, I can't say all people. I'm sure some people who run with that have indeed been there, but most people who are saying that and seeing that have never been there. Mm-hmm. And when you go there, you will realize, especially when you go into the middle of the Amazon, like I was able to do with Paul, you will realize what a speck you are and what a crowning achievement of Mother Nature that biosphere is. I mean, it's just like, it almost doesn't make sense. Like, and there were some times where I'd take in a moment and I'd be like, my God, the 5-year-old me is just like jumping for joy right now. Like, I'm floating in the water in the Amazon. Like, this is the most special thing ever. But, you know, Paul might literally clip what you just said right there, because and I understand this completely. It frustrates him so much when people say that, because he's trying to save the Amazon. And what happens is, in fairness to some of the people who make comments along those lines, what they really say is that we have found some man-made things, like a garden, in the Amazon, and then someone takes that quote and makes some article that they're going to sell ad space in. But the article headline to get people to click needs to be Amazon man-made. And most people read the headline, they see the tweet about it, and they're like, oh, shit, it's man-made. So suddenly now people get under the assumption, therefore, that, well, because it's man-made, we've done it before, I'm sure we can do it again. We can rebuild it, keep cutting the trees down. And, of course, that makes absolutely no sense. That's going to drive someone like Paul nuts, and it should. And so he wants to get out there to educate people to be like, yo, you got to be real careful saying this, because that's not what it is at all. In fact, and this is what he does, come down here and see it. I'll show you. Yeah. You'll realize within 2 seconds that ain't the case. This stuff is older than seemingly the world itself. Not literally, but you know what I mean. Yeah, for sure. It's like, this has been around since fucking the dinosaurs were around or whatever. But, you know, it's really important, I think, that we talk about that stuff the right way, because people don't see this in their backyard. It's the Amazon jungle. It's way down there. Oh, that's really cool. I've read about it in books. I've seen it in a couple movies. That's awesome. But it's you don't see it every day, and so you don't have the appreciation that the Amazon jungle, which is, I forget what percentage of the world's coverage it is, but it's a way smaller percentage than this. It represents 20% though of the world's global oxygen supply. So when it gets to an exponential point of no return, hopefully it never gets there because we can save this thing. But if it gets past a certain point to where, I'm making up numbers right now, but 43% of the Amazon were taken out. Therefore, it's going to go into extinction. It cannot be turned back around. We are going to face a world that's missing 20% of the oxygen moving forward, and will totally fuck up the entire ecosystem that we enjoy, be it here in New Jersey or over in Spain or China or wherever. Like, you need something like that to exist. So I appreciate someone like you who studies ancient history and looks at the amazing things that human beings and ancient civilizations have been able to pull off. I appreciate the fact that you also understand the actual basis of what's there in the first place, which is the land and the ecosystem that existed long before the people were actually using it.
Yeah. Well, I think that one, making 2 points. One, I think that clickbait titles have done such a disservice to like anything in the scientific world, because people just get these, and freedom of speech, you can say whatever you want. It's really people's responsibility to educate themselves, otherwise we just destroy ourselves. But the clickbait titles that nobody actually reads the article, or even worse, it's a clickbait title and then you have to pay to actually read the article. You know what I'm saying? So it's Amazon rainforest, man-made ? And you click on it, and then you have to, and then it all gets blurred out, and you can't read it, and you're like, oh, well, I guess it just must be man-made. This is what everybody else is saying. That's what this is saying. Anyway, so clickbait titles from articles suck, and people get so much wrong just because of stupid titles, and that's not just archaeology, but like I think it especially creates like very inaccurate understandings of the ancient world. Oversimplified understandings of the ancient world for sure. And then the second thing is, that idea, I mean, it allows people, when people believe that, they don't really care if China is logging up the entire Amazon, or if they're planning on cutting highways straight through the Amazon.
And America's buying it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it just allows people, especially with the Amazon in particular, but it just allows people to just not really care about the natural world because, it's just man-made. We could just do it again. Maybe they think that. So
that's right. And it's, that's obviously, that's something that's personal to me at this point, not just because we've done content on it in here and had a guy like Paul in a bunch, but, getting to see it and appreciate it. It's just, it's the coolest thing ever. And, as I move along, that's something I want to do more of. Yeah. Go see some things up close. It's one thing to sit here in your comfy little studio and talk about it like an armchair quarterback. But when you actually go see it, for better or worse, depending on where you're going and what you're seeing, you can speak to it more and you can understand it. And I just think, there is some shit in this world that is magical. And then there's some magical shit that human beings have been able to pull off to make it even more magical. And like, it doesn't need to be one or the other. With things, you can appreciate both. You can study the history and learn from it, and you can also study the setting and environment and preserve it. Those two things should be hand in hand. Not even like the Bloods and Crips meme either. Like, they should just be friends in general.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But the Aztecs get taken out quickly.
Very quickly,
by the Spanish, and then disease spreads, and then, the Spanish obviously pretty much colonized Mexico, and you fast forward and you get to somewhere, somehow, how we got to today. But you had put a pin in the Mayans, but in particularly the Olmecs and that whole history. I know that's something like, one of the things I love about you is that you are constantly traveling to all these places to go see it for yourself. And it's like a quest too. Like, you're always dressed the part too. I really appreciate that. But you've gone down and looked at a lot of the Olmec ruins and the places where they existed. And to me, the Olmecs, we talked about it in episode 175 a little bit, but it's a very among the ignored parts that we already highlighted, the fact that South America seems to be so ignored in a lot of these history discussions, ancient history discussions these days. The Olmecs are passed over so much. So for people out there who really have no idea what their origins were and who they were and what the civilization was like, can you just give the download on the Olmec people and their base history?
Yeah. So the Olmecs, man, incredibly ancient. It's the origins of Mesoamerica. Now, the basics of Mesoamerica is basically everything below the Rio Grande. So below Texas is essentially the most northern edge of Mesoamerica. And it continues all the way through Mexico into Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and it kind of fades out as you get closer to Panama. That's essentially Mesoamerica. And this has been my central area of expertise for quite a long time now. It was what I studied in college and got my anthropology degree in. And this was the world that opened up to me. I'm fascinated by it, and it's infinitely complex. But on the Veracruz coast, which is to the west of the Maya realm, to the east of where the Aztecs will later be, there is a river that connects to the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, as some people call it now. It's called the Coatzacoalcos River. I actually get a lot of flack for that because I make custom maps for my videos, and I still call it the Gulf of Mexico.
And you get flack for that?
Yeah. People will be like, no, it's the Gulf of America.
It's just a logistical nightmare, though.
I'm like, guys, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with tradition here. It's been the Gulf of Mexico for like 500 years.
It was fun to say.
Yeah. So, I'm not switching up because one guy says so. Yeah, I agree.
That's right.
So anyways, yeah. So it's the Coatzacoalcos River connects to the Gulf of Mexico, and along this river, it's essentially like think of the Coatzacoalcos River as the Nile River that the Egyptians, the Nile River gave the Egyptians their civilization. We did this whole rundown last time. It's not of the credit of the Egyptians, it's of the credit of the Nile. The Nile just gifted these riches to the Egyptians. So the Coatzacoalcos River just gifts all of this fertile land to the Olmecs. And in fact, I brought a group of students with me in December, and we went to San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan, which is the first capital, really the central metropolitan area of the Olmec world. And it's way up on top of this hill, and as you look down the hill towards the Coatzacoalcos River and these alluvial floodplains where all of their maize crops or their corn would grow, I took a photo of it, dude. If I were to show an Egyptian that photo, they would think that I took a photo of somewhere in Egypt. It's that similar. It's just, and I've been to other fertile crescents as well and looked at it, and I'm like, oh wow, these all have the same similarities. It's these low valleys where the river consistently floods and it has, creates this alluvial, fertile plain. And this is how civilization begins. It's it's fascinating seeing that. So the Olmec world begins at San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. It's the Fertile Crescent of Mexico. It's the most overlooked Fertile Crescent of the entire world. I mean, you have 7 Fertile Crescents. Mexico is the most overlooked one. It begins with San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan about 3,800 years ago. So 1800 BC, I should say. And so the Olmecs essentially, they get their rise from, they have port cities as well that are actually on the Gulf, and San Lorenzo is inland a little bit along the river. And so they're sailing out on the coast and they're fishing. They have, all types of resources from their ability to catch fish as well as raise corn. So they're just booming. They essentially rise before everybody else, and they just mastered agriculture before any of the other cultures in Mesoamerica even get started. And what's really crazy is it seems like right at the beginning of their civilization, they're able to quarry these 60-ton stones, these 60-ton solid basalt stones out of the Sierra de la Tuxtla volcanic belt to their northeast, and quarry them and transport them 90 miles away to this city and carve and erect these massive Olmec heads. And it's like they're doing this from the very beginning of their society. There is no, from what we can tell through the archaeology, there's no lead up to this. There's no developmental period before they're able to do this. They're just doing it from the very beginning. So we could look up just, I don't know if you have, my eyesight's not that great, but just Olmec heads or something.
Yeah, they're insane.
It's
How
crazy.
much did you say they weighed?
So this is okay. So this is a really cool mystery about the Olmec heads. So
Looks like a pulling guard.
oh, it's crazy. Yeah, it's beautiful, man. And there's 17 known heads, but there's actually 3 more heads that most people have never seen, but they're made out of sandstone, and they're not even human. They're like were-jaguar, half human, half jaguar faces. Yeah, we'll get into this. It's really, really cool. This is actually something that connects to South America and Peru, by the way.
Okay.
And I think it has its origins in the Amazon. This is kind of my other area that I'm looking into.
Interesting.
So you asked about how much they weigh. So get this. So the Maya Exploration Center, of which I'm a member of, this is run by my mentor, Dr. Ed Barnhart. On one of his Olmec expeditions, he had a nautical engineer that was traveling with him who was fascinated by this idea of how did the Olmecs transport these heads. So he created this algorithm that you could put in I'm not exactly sure what it was, a software or a site or something, where you could input the theoretical weight of your Olmec head and the theoretical size of your balsa river raft. And he found that if you made the raft too big to go down the narrow stretches of the Coatzacoalcos River, and you put a 5-ton head on that raft, it would flip the raft and sink it. Okay.
So the engineering has
so going back over this, if it's too long and too wide to go down the narrow stretches of the river to actually make it to the city, it's already too big to go down the river, and you put a 5-ton head on it, it would sink the raft. The smallest head is 6 tons, and the largest head is 52 tons. So nobody knows exactly how these things were transported. It's just all archaeologists have quietly known. What's your idea? Aliens. Could be.
Well, UFO came down.
See, that would be the easiest way to do this.
That's what I'm saying. It makes the most sense.
But see, the problem with the alien thing is we have to figure out, like, the aliens come down and then Native Americans are like, please, we're starving. Our children are dying. We need something like penicillin. And they're like, no. We'll teach you. You need these rocks.
Right.
We'll lift the rocks for you.
Because then they can pray to something.
Yeah, then they can pray to something.
And have their soul saved.
Yeah.
Because the real life happens after that on Earth.
Could be.
See?
Could be.
I already got all the holes filled in.
I know you do.
You're not going to plug these.
I think you've been plugging the aliens every episode.
Not every episode. There's a lot of misinformation out there. But when we look at the ancient world, there's some stuff that I'm like, come on. Something happened.
You know what I actually have to agree with you. I kind of like when I think of like little green men and spaceships, I kind of roll my eyes at that idea. But at the same time, then I also find myself like as a religious person, I find myself studying ancient people and I see the bizarre things that they come up with and the things that they believe and the things that they, have this conviction about. Yeah. And, there's entire eras. There's 2 entire eras of Maya civilization where they give no credit to any single person for anything, and they dedicate every temple to a god and never lift up one person. It's like they do it all for the gods. The Egyptians seem to do everything for the gods. There were Greeks who literally actually believed that the gods exist. Well, I mean, most Greeks did. It was only the philosophers that started kind of questioning whether or not the gods existed. But, you see so many ancient cultures go so far out of their way for their gods. It just makes me think like, okay, what is actually the answer to this? Is it that people are just looking for something, like they're looking for an answer, so they kind of just make something up? Do they make it all up to be able to control the people beneath them? Or does it make more sense that these people were so convicted by their beliefs because what they were experiencing actually happened to them. And it's like, what's the line between an ancient person taking some kind of natural hallucinogen and interacting with a deity while he's in that space,
Right.
and an alien? What's
gets
the
weird.
line that you draw there?
It gets weird, man.
And like, okay, I'm saying this as a very self-aware Christian. Where does like Christianity fit in this?
Sure.
It's a fascinating thing. And so I agree with you. I laugh about the alien stuff, but then I also have to remind myself, like, well, my hot take about the ancient world is that I actually think it's more likely that it's not all made up.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy joking about it in all seriousness, and I wonder what the hell's out there in this giant galaxy that we have no idea the ends of it and all that stuff. But we live in this world, especially when it comes to religion, where people want to make things everything or nothing, right?
Yeah,
Religion is at the top of that sphere.
Yeah, it is.
And there's all these different world religions, and then there's these different stories and different interpretations and different translations and different characters and different, I could go on down the list, right? And to me, it's like, where are there themes that it's like, oh, wait a minute. And that lines up with that a little bit. That lines up with that a little bit. Maybe there's some sort of truth there, even if it's a different experience. And then you get to the way that conscious human beings have the ability to experience things. I've talked to you about my friend Riz Vert. So he was on episode 274 with me. At the time of this recording, we just recorded a new one. I haven't put it out yet, but it's definitely out now if you're watching this podcast right now. But, he's an MIT simulation theorist, absolute genius, great guy too. And he's thinking about, some of the most unanswerable questions there are, which have to do with the mathematical probability and scientific evidence for the idea that things exist as 0 and 1s around us, and our consciousness just can't understand that. And one of the many things that he talks about is that when it comes to like UFO sightings or anything that has to do with an alien or something not of this earth that appears in written record or oral record throughout human history, it's like it's possible, and it's even been reported this way, that there are people who can be standing next to each other in the same place and only one person witnesses something supernatural going on. The other person doesn't see it at all. So something in this person's consciousness is transcribed to just a little bit of a different frequency. That's not the word to use, but it's set to just a little bit of a different frequency than the other person, and it allows them to see this and experience this, and then, maybe get whatever information comes from that. So if you look at things like the pyramids that pop up in all these different places and civilizations that were stuck in different time periods, basically, over time. And when you look at some unexplainable stuff like the Olmec heads and things like that, where is there potentially some divine intervention? We know there's a lot of world leaders that have liked to lie about, oh, I got talked to by the gods, therefore you got to worship me, and they're full of shit. But which ones weren't? Which ones actually did have some sort of prophet, seeing through to whatever the other side is? I don't care what that is, whether that's God, whether it's simulation, whether it's aliens, whether it's future I don't know.
Yeah.
But you have to at least, as crazy as it sounds, and it sounds fucking insane to even say it out loud, but you have to ask these questions when you're looking at some amazing innovations that ancient civilizations did, where we have evidence that like they didn't have iPhones. They didn't have something that's totally different than an iPhone, but technologically equivalent to that. Yet they were able to pull something like this off. There is something there, man.
I totally agree with you. I actually think, I really think that the answer to a lot of this is going to be found in, God, I don't even know what we would call it, like psychedelic archeology.
Psychedelic archeology.
I don't know. I just made that up. But I think that once this boomer generation of archaeologists moves on.
I love that. Was a very nice Texas Christian boy way of saying that.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to discredit archaeologists. They all do, basically all of them do amazing work. There are people who make their public opinions known that are very bad public opinions, but vast majority of archaeologists work super hard jobs and achieve a lot for very little credit. However, it's impossible for our preconceived notions of our modern day reality to not bleed into our profession, right? So I can't tell you how many archaeologists I have spoken to and tried to talk to them about the psychedelics that the culture of which they are an expert in was partaking in. And, you know, I met an archaeoastronomer, spent a week with him. And
Archaeoastronomer.
yeah, archaeoastronomy, it's kind of a new
What a flex.
it's a new frontier of archeology. It's essentially the study of ancient cultures' interaction with the night sky. So trying to study ancient astronomers and what they understood about the night sky and how that can further reinform and change our perspective on the culture that we're studying or the ancient sites that we're looking at. Like, you may not understand why this building is not lined exactly to true north and why it's 15 degrees off, and why is this building also 15 degrees off, but yet the retaining wall is facing a different direction. Yada, yada, yada. Well, if you were able to unlock the secrets of the city, you would realize that each of the orientation of these buildings and walls had a purpose that was facing towards the night sky or the sun, and that shadows and knives of light would like shine through the buildings, and they're all astronomical solar clocks. It's crazy stuff, dude. Like, it's really, really in depth. Now, I had this realization in like 2021. I did some edibles with my buddy, and we're laying down, looking underneath the.
I hope you did mood.
I don't know.
They were mood. They just say it for the camera. They were mood, right?
They were mood. No, I don't know.
For our sponsorships. Deep and I enjoy. Anyway, please continue.
So I'm laying there looking at the night sky, and you know, I must have taken like 30 milligrams or something, and you know, I'm blasting off, you know, and I'm laying there, and after a couple hours, like, I've lost my ego. I'm no longer me anymore. I'm just one with the night sky and with the universe, and I'm like looking at a photo of myself and not even looking at it as though it's me. I just can't even believe that that's my body that I exist inside of, and it makes you have all these realizations about yourself and the things you need to fix about yourself. It's very medicinal, the whole experience is. And I had this feeling where I felt like whatever God is, I understood him. I couldn't put it into words, but I could just feel it. I could feel it deeply to my core. And I could only feel it in that moment. Once I sobered it up, it kind of went away. I wasn't able to like access that. It's like it frees you up and opens your mind up to some other, I mean, you probably maybe experienced something like this before. And
yeah, just like that.
Yeah. And so I'm having this experience, and then it just opened up my eyes to like, oh, this is, you know, I can see how a culture doing this for thousands of years and trying to figure out the secrets of their natural world, how religion can form and how people can learn so much about, you know, the introspective aspects of reality. And maybe this is where shamanism comes from, and ancient priests, like, it probably has something to do with this, because I can only imagine if I were to do this for my entire lifetime, the things I would experience and the insights that I might have, right? And so anyways, I start talking to, as time goes on, I experiment more and more, and I have different realizations about archaeology. Like, I'll be thinking about these ancient cultures that I'm obsessed with, and I will realize different aspects of their society that I'd never realized before. And it's like things would unlock, and I would get these new perspectives. And I found it like incredibly helpful. It's not like I do this a lot, but I've just found it incredibly helpful. And so I'm talking to this archaeoastronomer, and I'm like, okay, so you study the Pueblo ancestral people. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what kind of psychedelics do they do? And so he lists them out to me, and I'm like, do you ever go out and stargaze at night at these, you know, at these sites that you study, these cliff dwelling sites out in the desert? He's like, oh yeah, all the time. I'm like, do you ever do the psychedelics that they did and then stargaze? And he's like, no, I would never do that. What? And he had this knee-jerk reaction, and it's just it was the boomer in him bleeding through into the archaeology, right? Like, because you have this preconceived notion of drugs. You know, all drugs bad. All drugs bad. There's no distinction between like crack cocaine and weed, right?
Let's talk to Hunter Biden. Listen, that was like listening to Michael Jordan break down basketball. I mean, that was incredible. Yeah.
So
Hunter Biden talking about crack.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Best 3 minutes and 15 seconds and TV. Please continue.
Anyways, yeah. So, to a lot of boomers, there's no distinction between natural plant medicine, medicinal drugs, things that are mostly harmless, non-addictive. Marijuana isn't changing the chemical makeup of your brain to force you to become addicted to it, and it's also not poisoning your body, right? Like alcohol, cigarettes, other drugs do. They just destroy your body. There's no distinction there. And so he had this like knee-jerk reaction where it was like beneath him to ever do something like that. And I talked to him that whole week and I was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, if you took these natural psychedelics and hallucinogens with everything you know about this culture, I promise you the pathways your brain is going to go down, you're going to have epiphanies about a culture you've studied your entire life because you're going to view them from a perspective you've never experienced before, and you're gonna be stepping into their shoes. And it was like I wore him down by the end. I think he's done it since then.
Take this mushroom.
Yeah. And so I forget where. Oh, well, we got off onto this because I think that the origins of a lot of civilization is probably found in shamanism and psychedelics, and I think that like this Renaissance archaeology, like independent archaeology, is going to grow and grow and grow. There's already so many people who are researching things on their own and making discoveries on their own. I think maybe one of the best examples is the YouTube channel History for Granite. He's done so much research on the pyramids.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that channel.
He's done so much research on the pyramids that Egyptologists have acknowledged his discoveries and his perspectives, and these things are going to end up in textbooks.
Wow.
Yeah, he is like the first wedge. There's been all these other people. He is the first wedge to go through.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's good. You got to break through onto each other's sides a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we
for
got to
sure.
find some common ground.
For sure.
And I think I've always cited you as an amazing example of that because you come from both worlds. You come from understanding some of the alternative perspectives and being genuinely interested in it since you were a little kid, but you were also academically trained under Ed Barnhart at college. Like this is what you're an expertise in from the academic side of it. So you understand the establishment and the anti-establishment and where both have a point on certain things.
Sure.
And you've done a really good job to this point in your career of straddling that line and kind of being a peacemaker there. And I hope you continue to do that because some of the fighting, especially, behind keyboards on Twitter, it's just like, guys, get the fuck, stop this. Get in a room and talk. You don't have to agree on everything.
It's a tough place to be. It's a tough place to be. I used to want to be involved more in the conversation, like actively going out and being involved in the conversation. And I've realized the best thing I can do is kind of just retreat back into my space, focus on my own work, and interact with people that want to interact with me, right? Because I'm really not accepted by the alternative side, although I'm cool with a lot of those people. We're all fine. But in the academics, I'm cool with most academics, but I'll never be accepted by them. I'm never going to be part of the club. And so I'm just kind of, out here on my own island.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm just out here on my own island. I've got a few friends. Club. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that the appetite for all the fighting is dying off. I think people are just kind of over it because it's not
productive.
Hope
you're right about that, but I disagree. I think people... I think there's people that unfortunately live for it. It's just how it is. And it's human nature. Mm-hmm. We just now have more accessibility than ever to be able to do it instantaneously all day, every day.
Yeah, that's true.
We've kind of evolved to that.
Yeah, so, that's my role is I want to be one of these people in this kind of renaissance of archaeology, sort of doing it on my own. Now, that doesn't mean I have legal permits to go and dig at places, but man, there's been so many artifacts that have been excavated and so many narratives and puzzles that haven't been pieced together yet from, so many artifacts get excavated and then handed over to a museum and never get looked at again. They just sit in a glass case and they sit there forever.
Such a shame.
And they never get studied. But as I've gone around the world and focused on certain cultures, I have noticed patterns between things where I will try to go research it and no other archaeologist has ever acknowledged certain things that I've noticed. And I've realized this particularly with the Americas, and that the Americas are just very much understudied. And this is kind of what you and I were talking about recently, where I was thinking about doing going to school in Athens. And
ancient Greece.
I always loved the classical world. I grew up loving it just like everybody else did. My grandpa, on his nightstand, he had this book called Western Progress, and it was essentially the origins of Western society all the way up to like Henry V in England, from the pharaohs through Greece and Egypt, through medieval times, all the way to King Henry. And I would look at that book and look at it and look at it, and I'd poke through it and look at the pictures and read what I could. Much more dense reading than I was able to comprehend. But it was the classical world. It was Egypt, Greece, and Rome that first sparked my love for the ancient world. And it was weird as I was going down the path of committing to go to school for a year. It was going to be about 18 months in Athens, at the University of Athens. I was committed. I was about to pay, and then it was like the day before, I just had this huge wave of guilt come over me, and I felt like I was betraying a world that had given itself to me. Like studying the Americas was not something I ever anticipated that I would do. I always found it interesting, but I never anticipated that I would specialize and go all in on it. But when I changed my major, I was 20 years old. I was going to fail all of my marketing classes. I was going to flunk out of college. I had to appeal to the dean to be able to switch to anthropology. They barely let me switch my major. I switched, and in Texas, they breed Mesoamerican archaeologists or Mexican archaeologists that specialize in ancient Mexico, what we've been talking about this whole time. And they just breed that. There really wasn't much about Egypt. I took one part of a semester of a class on Egypt, and I just focused on the Americas. And that's how I met Dr. Ed Barnhart, and that's how I came to learn about this great archaeologist Linda Sheely, and it's how I came to learn about the Maya, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Zapotecs, and then later on the Inca. And it was like the Americas just opened itself up to me and accepted me. And
you feel a spiritual kinship to it.
Yeah, right. And also my family, they were obsessed with the Spanish gold going back to the 1800s. I talked with Joe about this. I think we maybe even talked about this on my first episode with you in my first conversation. Like all the way back to the 1800s, my family was chasing down Spanish gold, and they were tracking down Spanish gold mines, but they didn't realize that the Spanish gold mines were expanded indigenous mines. And my grandpa had found all these mogollon, which is just a New Mexican tribe, all this pottery and artifacts. And, my family's just deeply involved with the Americas. And then in college, the Americas opened itself up to me, and I became sort of an expert in it in college. And I just felt like, even though I was wanting to return to what my childhood love was, it was the day before I was supposed to pay for my tuition. I had this nasty wave of guilt come over me, and I called Dr. Barnhart and I told him, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can turn my back on the Americas. I think I'm meant to study it. But I had to come all the way to the point of almost no return to realize that's what I was supposed to do.
How long would school in Athens have been?
18 months. But the thing,
I see what you're saying, and I understand. You felt like it would have been like crossing over literally and figuratively, and now you're going to pour your heart and soul into that, and you're going to leave this behind. But I don't think you would have ever left that fully behind. And if this is
Maybe
part
not.
of the way the journey need to go for you, then that's great.
Yeah,
And I can feel how passionate you are about the Americas and about not wanting to leave that behind. But one of the things I like about you is you do study all of it. Like the last time you were here in November, the episode didn't come out till end of January, beginning of February, but we did 6 hours, 2 episodes of basically, it was the 27,000 year history of Egypt. And it was spot the fuck on. I mean, it was amazing, amazing stuff. You were taking me through timelines I didn't even know existed. And so for a guy who can go travel through the jungles of Guatemala and Mexico and break down everything that you've been studying your whole life and continue to find new frontiers, for that same guy to be able to take us over to Egypt, where you've also been and spent time, by the way, and run us through a historical thread that goes beyond even our comprehension of what human history is supposed to be, I think that's an incredible, incredible range to have. And I always want to see you keep that range, which means keeping all of it in the fold together. So if you felt like you were going to get too caught up in some of the more, I don't know, this isn't the term I'm looking for, but mainstream ancient type stuff, whether that
Sure.
be ancient Greece or just ancient Rome, and it's going to pull you away from these other overlooked areas, then great. I'm glad you passed that up.
Yeah. I think the thing was, it was like it was like, you know how sometimes I forget what the word is, but sometimes you go looking for something and something else chooses you.
That's right.
And it's like the universe opens up this door, and this is the door you're meant to walk through. You don't feel it in that moment, but that's the door that's meant for you, you know? Yeah, exactly. And I had to go down the ancient Greece route. I loved Greece, man. Like, the very first thing that got me into ancient history was Brad Pitt's Troy. You know, I love that damn movie, dude.
Took Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it was Brad Pitt.
Fuck the history. Fuck the Odyssey. I needed Brad.
Yeah, so it was I was obsessed with that movie. In fact, as a kid, I memorized every single movement of the sword fights in that movie. I could reenact all of it.
Yeah, I've seen you and your wife role play.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
More than I wanted to see. But
exactly. Yeah,
you know, wearing all the.
Yeah, and
don't post that on social.
No, I won't post it.
If you want to do an OnlyFans, knock yourself out.
That's a good idea. Actually,
fucking.
I need to start
fucking Luke Caverns. He's got a porn name over here already.
So I
hit you with that curve.
I loved ancient Greece, and but yeah, it was just I needed to go that far to the day before I was supposed to pay the tuition to know, okay, hold on. If you're going to go here, you're going to pour your heart and soul into this. It's going to distract from all the America stuff you're doing. How can you go back to that? Like, you just need to. I had to basically return back to the feeling I had when I first started all this, because I'm very much the type of person. I'm very influenced by my academic background, and so much of that was like, you know, so many people in my ear, you really should get a higher degree, you really should get a PhD, you really should specialize, you really should become a particular expert in this one thing. And I was hearing that all the time, and it was the day before I was supposed to pay that I just knew, stop all of that. You got to go back to the feeling that you had when you first started all this, was that you wanted to be like a jack of all trades and study whatever you were interested in. So, you know, whether that's, you know, I was in Cambodia recently, studying ancient Cambodian world, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome. But, you know, the Americas is kind of like, I guess it's like my journey. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much there that needs to be discovered and uncovered and spoken about. And I think as time goes on, and the last time I was in the fall when I was talking to Danny on his show, and I was talking about the LiDAR maps that I have access to in North America that show all these mound sites in Florida and how I want to focus on North America. And then talking with you about the period just before the Revolution and how much history there is with Native Americans. I'm seeing this world of Native American history that isn't dived into enough, and it's like this deep purpose that's there. Yeah. Whereas with ancient Greece, it's all pretty much understood. You know, there's not a whole lot of mystery. Like, there's the Eleusinian mysteries, there's a few things there, but like the Native American world is completely shrouded in mystery.
Yes.
And it just like calls to me and opened itself up to me. Like, I didn't ask for it. It just happened in my life by accident, you know, and it's like I was born to do it, you know.
I think so.
And I just realized that right at the last moment. Anyways,
it's beautiful, and I agree with you. I think, as you've described it in the past, in episode 175, towards the beginning of that, it's literally in your blood. You know, like you were just saying a few minutes ago, your family was looking for some of this stuff. You know, so it's a part of who you are, and I think there's something to that in how passions get passed down generationally, almost like DNA in a way, and that's there. So, you know, here you are covering that, and you're gonna keep doing that, and that's great, man. Follow your heart. I love it. That's what I want everyone to do.
Yeah, you've got me particularly interested in this topic of now I want to start diving into like Native Americans leading up to the Revolutionary War. Just talking with you a little bit about it in the last couple of days has made me think like, you know, I know a little bit about this, but it's such an interesting realm of history.
Even with it's one of the great things I love talking about when people are in town and we're walking along the Hudson there and looking at Manhattan, especially people who aren't from around here and they're kind of taking it in and appreciating that. But like even at the Revolutionary War, like the average American even doesn't understand that New York City was the center of that war. It was the linchpin of that. It wasn't Yorktown, which ended up being where, you know, Cornwallis got surrounded in 81 by the Continental Army, and that effectively, it didn't end the war, but it effectively ended the war. It wasn't, you know, some of the southern sites, it wasn't Philadelphia, which was the capital and certainly a key place. You had New York, which, you know, sat on this island. If we're looking at camera 4 right here, you know, you got two rivers parting, fortification to the east that creates Long Island for ships coming directly across from Europe, i.e. invaders. And then when you run up the Hudson, you go up there about an hour and you got the greatest turn and spot for a military fortress in the world, which became West Point, you know, at the time because of its high ground and where it was located vis-a-vis the Hudson River. And it's like so much of what happened right here when this looked very, very different.
Very different.
And now you think about the years leading up to that when there was an insane speed of colonial takeover between the British and the French, and then they end up fighting this war, and caught in the middle of it were all these Native American tribes that existed in all these areas right here. And it's not long ago. This is less than 300 years ago. We're going to do the 250th next year. You know, there is history below your feet everywhere. It may not be like quite as noticeable, combination of noticeable and far back as like when you're walking through Rome.
Yeah.
Sure. But there's a significant amount of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Right beneath your feet right here even.
Yeah,
It's an awesome thing to tell.
People vastly underestimate how complicated the pre-colonial world really was. You know, Squanto, I'm sure you know the story of Squanto. That's a fascinating, it gives you a little window into how complicated this world was before the white man was ever even here. You know, Squanto, I think he's born in the late 1500s because he's captured in like 1614 or something like that, and or maybe 1612 when he's, you know, just a teenager. And he grew up in what is today, the late 1500s. Okay, so he grows up in what is today modern-day Massachusetts, and he grows up within these three warring tribes that are there. So it gives you this idea. There's already complications here. There's this history of these conflicting tribes just in this small area. Yeah. Imagine what the entire United States looks like at this moment.
He was the tannest dude in Massachusetts, too.
Probably.
I mean, you know, those Irishmen ain't getting sun up there, but he was doing okay.
And
he was onto something.
And so, you know, when he's I believe when he's a teenager or when he's maybe in his early 20s, he gets captured by a trading expedition and he's brought back to England. Imagine that from his perspective. You're being pulled to an alien realm that's vastly technologically superior to you. Like cobblestone streets with giant ships and what, do they have black powder rifles by the early 1600s? I mean, they had obviously crossbows. I don't know if rifles existed. Like maybe the little hand cannons existed. Obviously cannons exist. I mean, just like think about did the London Bridge still exist? I don't know. But I mean, just it must have been mind-blowing for him. So he essentially works in London for 10, or I think it's London, but he works in England for 10 years. And then he's finally freed and able to return back to the Americas. He joins a trading expedition, and they essentially they really do him dirty. They drop him off in Newfoundland, and they're like, this is the closest that we can get you. And he's like, oh my God. So that dude solo hasn't been in the Americas for 10 years, builds a boat, sails from Newfoundland to the mainland, and makes his way all the way back home to Massachusetts.
That's insane.
Solos it, as far as I know. When he gets to Massachusetts, he finds the three tribes are in complete disarray, and they've been absolutely decimated by disease. So this is around 1620 or so, when the first Thanksgiving is 1621, right?
Yeah, he died in November 1622, so we're coming up on
he
the end.
he died on the second Thanksgiving, by the way.
Yeah.
Crazy. So he arrives a few years before the first Thanksgiving, and he finds that his homeland, his own people, his family, they've all died. Most of his friends have died, and the warring tribes that he grew up opposing and hating, they were all decimated, and the land was in complete disarray. Well, what had happened? What have we been talking about? The Spaniards had invaded the Aztec realm, and now disease had spread from Mexico City all the way up the Americas, and had from Florida as well, and had moved towards that northern coast. And just now, 100 years later, it was infecting people in Massachusetts and wiping them all out. And so Squanto returns to find his home like this. So he takes these 3 tribes and he turns them into the Wampanoag Confederation that he is now chief of. Because, I mean, obviously he's the most experienced man. He has so much knowledge of the world now, and he's obviously the most outstanding character in this new land. And this is where I think like this story is just crazy. So one of his informants come to him and they tell him, is it Jamestown? I think
it's Jamestown.
Jamestown. Yeah.
Correct us in the comments.
Yeah, I'm going to get torn up for that. Like I said, my early colonial history, I'm just now getting into it. But they basically come and say, hey, we know that you have a history with these white men. I think that some of these white men, the same people, are living out here on this town on the coastline, and they're suffering. More than half of them died last winter. They don't know how to work the land. This is a completely different type of agriculture than they're used to. They're not used to growing maize and potatoes. And so they haven't figured out the land. And so imagine you're one of these colonists. You're living in this little town. There's Native Americans out there. You haven't been attacked by them yet, but you've grown up hearing stories of what they could do to people. And so you're always kind of weary of like what exists inside that tree line that we can't see, who's watching us, right? And then all of a sudden, this Native American man walks out of the jungle speaking perfect English and walks up to you. Isn't that so weird? Like, how mind-blowing that must have been for a guy to walk out and be like, hello, how are you? Speaking perfect English that they would understand. It must have been just utterly jarring. And Squanto, he felt empathy for them. He was the only native there that we know of, and clearly that saw their humanity and felt compelled to help them because they were suffering, even though they were on their land and shouldn't be there. And he probably knew very well from growing up in England what the English intentions were for this new land was to colonize it and spread out, and yet he still helped them. And so he teaches them how to farm the land and everything, saves that town, and then the next year on Christmas, the Spanish influenza, the European influenza, or I'm sorry, not the next year on Thanksgiving, Squanto dies from that European disease on the second.
Imagine that you make it through everything. You find your way back home. You're one of the most cultured men in the world because you've existed across multiple civilizations effectively, and then the flu gets you.
Isn't that weird that highly important men, that guy's up there and one of the most important people that's ever lived. I don't know if you had to rank a top 10,000 human beings that's ever lived. He's into the top 10,000. Yeah. And it's like, isn't it weird? It's like people use up their importance quickly and then they die. You know what I mean?
Wuhan, bro.
It's it's very crazy. Like you look at all of the conquistadors, they all die shortly after this great achievement that they've made. Oriana makes it down the Amazon, survives it, does it again, dies at 35.
It's a lot like I guess it's like a wasp or something when they have, not the people, the actual insect, when they have that climactic moment in the heat of battle after this life of, finding all these places to live and building things as a hive, basically being warriors for the tribe of wasps and bees and everything, and then they have to use their stinger. Yeah. And it's this ultimate moment where it's like their crowning achievement, and unless it's the dude mowing his lawn that they just ruin his day, if it's actually another type of species that's more on their level, they kill this thing. And it's like that moment in the movie, and then when they do it, they die.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
It's like they release, it's like post-nut clarity, but you're dead.
Yeah. Like they release their potential. Everything
exactly.
they have to be great, it comes out and you die immediately
And it's
afterwards.
gone. South Park episode.
How many people does that happen to? It's a lot throughout history. It's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, or people have these early, premature, very bizarre deaths, like George Washington's death. You know what I mean? He could have lived quite a bit longer, and then he gets.
But he was pretty old.
Was he?
Like 65, I think.
Okay, 65. But yeah, he could have lived longer.
He was 66.
Or maybe he was.
George
Maybe he was.
Washington.
I think he was maybe like 67 or something.
Yeah,
but
he was right in
but
that
he
area.
gets what doctors today think was bronchitis, and then they perform all these crazy procedures on him. Yeah, 67. Yeah. They perform all these crazy procedures on him to try to save his life, and then they just kill him. And if they had just left him alone, he might have survived bronchitis. You know, it's just funny.
That's a story of medicine.
Yeah,
it took a long time to get it there.
Yeah.
Maybe if Ben Franklin had come up with something, they would have jolted him to life.
I know, man. That's a rough world, dude.
I had the
modern
Squanto
medicine.
thing just reminds me of this. I had this guy, Andy Powell, in here for episode 202.
I've heard that name.
Okay, so this guy was so cool. He's from the UK, and he was the mayor of a town, I forget the name of it, on the southwest coast of the UK. And I can't remember, we recorded this January 2024, and then I put out the episode. I held that one. I put that one out like end of April 2024, beginning of May. It was like right there. But he came across some sort of historical record where he realized that the lost colony of Roanoke was really the first colony in America before the ones that we know of. And it was really founded in like 1587. And that the guys who founded it were from his town. And so it turned into this odyssey where he literally ended up moving to the United States, where he still lives, and sunk his life into this for the last over 2 decades, covering the story and figuring out what happened, because there's something strange where they came through, went back to Britain, and then came back, and the people they had left there were gone, and they found a sign from, I forget the local tribe, what they were called. I think it starts with a C, but the local Indian tribe, where they wondered if they were like
Croatoa.
The Croatoans, that's right. And they found a sign that said like Croatoa. And they didn't know if it was like an SOS signal, like we've been kidnapped by them and maybe eaten or whatever the fuck could happen, killed, maimed, or if the people just joined with the tribe and left forever. And it's like forgotten to history. But he talks about the history of some of the Croatoans that when they met them coming here, they took them back to the UK, and there's records of them being in the UK and like, I don't know, testifying to their experiences and taking in the culture. It's very similar to Squanto, but 100 years before him doing that, over 100 years before him, where, you know, there was this cross-pollination of culture at the highest first level. And, you know, these people got to experience something so outside of what their reality had been before, you know, these Brits just washed up on shore. It's a crazy, crazy story. It's so fascinating because you try to put yourself in the shoes of both parties. And, you know, one's discovering like a land filled with people that have no relation to their culture. And, you know, then the other has the opportunity for some of their people to go back over to where those people came from and see their culture and experience the same thing. And you're just like, it's like a fucked up version of Spider-Man meme, but you know, they're not both Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's a brilliant book. I think it's called Broken Spears, and it says, I think it's called Broken Spears, and it says it's the Aztec discovery of the Spaniards, and it's written from the Aztec point of view and how bizarre it must have been for Native Americans to see. You know, you never think about it from the Native American point of view, how strange that must have been. But yeah, man. Okay, so in North America, people don't realize this, and this is kind of what we were talking about. There's this underbelly of North American colonial history. I mean, when we think about the colonies, like the average person typically thinks of at the earliest maybe the Boston Tea Party. You know what I mean? Like typically,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Like at the earliest, that's kind of where it begins.
Yep.
Dude, there's 200 years
Oh,
of history
yeah.
beneath that. 200 years of history beneath that. 200 years before that, there are already forts way out in North Carolina near where I live, Winston-Salem. I think it's called San Juan Fort. And the Spaniards put a fort all the way out there. They were going to try to make a claim for all of the Southeast United States. This is crazy stuff, dude. So I think it's in the 1530s or maybe it's the 1560s. They put a fort all the way out in North Carolina. And kind of like the colony of Roanoke, they essentially say, hey guys, I don't know when we're going to be back. So you're just going to have to survive. And we're going to go from the coastline and build inwards to try to get to this fort. You know what I mean? They're going to try to cut off this northern edge and this southern edge and essentially corner off piecemeal, you know, the southeast US and eventually connect it to Texas. But they had some problems with the Comanches in Texas, so they kind of abandoned that. The Comanches were...
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So this Fort San Juan, if they were able to connect these trade routes from the Mississippi River to the North Carolina coast, like the Outer Banks and over, they would have cornered off the entire Southeast United States. We'd all be speaking Spanish today. It would be completely different. But the Cherokee banded together and raided that fort in the middle of the night, like one of the biggest invasions that we know of that's completely overlooked in American history. And it was the Cherokee that pushed the Spaniards out of the Southeast United States and destroyed that fort. Had that not ever happened...
Shout out to the Cherokee.
Shout out to the Cherokee. Had that not ever happened, history could look totally different right now. And man, there's all kinds of stories of this. Of the 1500s, Europeans are out exploring North America and trying to conquer it. It's just... And all of these things had to happen exactly the way that they did for American history to turn out the way that it did. It's just... It's an incredible history, dude.
I also talk about it all the time, the exponential bias with which we view history. And what I mean by that is when we look at what we might put, quote unquote, modern history and talk about like post-World War II, we have generations that are still alive. So we look at like the people that were growing up in the 40s and 50s as they're the oldest people in our society. That was so long ago, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not that long ago. The farther back we go, though, we start to squeeze together time. Meaning, by the time we get to thinking about the 1700s, someone who lived in 1725 seems almost the same as someone who lived in 1765. Whereas today, when we look at it, someone who lived in 1965 and someone who lived in 2005, two very different people. But then when you get all the way back to like year zero or 50 AD or 100 AD, we talk about people that lived in 50 AD and 375 AD is like the same thing, and they're fucking 12 generations apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
crazy.
Culture is so different. So we look at time through this weird sphere based on our current perspective of it. And so we ignore, as you said, a lot of that, like, that's like almost 200 years of history, basically, before you even have a Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
That's almost the length of our current existence as a country.
Yeah.
Wild.
When it's like, it's like the recipe, all of the ingredients are coming together for what the world society is going to become today, and it gets looked over. I remember growing up, you get the basic American history. That's why I say most of the time we start colonial history, you open up, American textbook in high school, and it starts with the Boston Tea Party. There's nothing before that, not really. I mean, maybe there is something there.
Put like the Stamp Act in there.
Yeah. But that's kind of where it begins, in those years leading up to the kicking off of, the Declaration of Independence. And what's funny is you might get something about Columbus in there as well. And it's like I don't know if most people, we all have Columbus in the back of our head. 1492, sails the ocean blue. He discovered the Americas. Boom, American Revolution. You know what I mean? You almost like don't even perceive the fact that there's so many. I mean, it's almost 300 years difference in there, and it's like we just skip directly over that. I think that's so true. I use that saying. I was talking with Mark yesterday about that. I shouted you out. I was like, Julian, he words it so well that the further you go back in time, we start like compacting it together, almost like we're minimizing the files and just clumping them all in because we're just so far removed from it that we minimize the significance of those periods of time.
We can't have that appreciation of how different those things look. Like, imagine plucking a person from year 100 and another person from year 200. They wouldn't even know how to have a conversation with each other.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
We just look at everything as like Moore's law. Well, it's just gotten faster with technology, so it was slower back then. Yeah, but people change.
Think about this. If you put yourself in a room with another guy that's exactly your age, but in 1925, and you're both standing down the street in New York City, you have nothing to relate to each other, nothing in common at all. Your perception of New York City, every single facet of the entire city is utterly, completely different, right? And it's like, man, you think about, I guess this kind of easily gets into like why sometimes I'm just perplexed at how vindictive archaeologists and historians can be about their assertions about the ancient world, because I'm like, dude, I don't even know if you could actually dive into and truly appreciate and understand the mindset of somebody who lived exactly where you do 100 years ago.
You can't. Joe might be able to. He's been writing a play about it that's now off Broadway on New York. Shout out Sacco and Vanzetti, the famous case from the late 1910s into 1920s.
Yeah.
You'd be able to have a conversation with someone back then.
Yeah, I think so. I think I could match up with their transatlantic accent.
Is that really a fake thing, this transatlantic accent? Like, was it something that was only put on for movies and radio? It was like something. It was an accent that they tried to force, right, to sound aristocratic or sound smart.
You want to do it for people, Joe?
You're coming in the morning, and we're gonna play, and we're gonna have a couple of cheeseburgers with some cigarettes on our cheeseburgers. We're gonna put cigarettes on everything because that's what we love here. We love cigarettes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, see, he's like spot on.
Nice job, dude.
He could do it. No, I love that. This is like, he's a stud.
Okay, so is that accent? It was actually artificial, though, right?
Yes.
Like, Americans tried to make it work, but it didn't.
Yeah, and for, like you said, it was supposed to give an air of aristocracy and just make you sound smarter and more sophisticated, and especially for like showbiz. There's a lot of those guys sounded really stupid with their actual regular voices.
Did they actually take it on though? Meaning, like, people put it on so much that they used it?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you look at if you look over in England and high society, there's the accent of the kings, right? They speak differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And they actually talk like that because
they do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's worse. It's the worst.
Yeah, it's pretty gay. But anyway.
It's not as gay as as the way that so like when you go around the Latin American world and you hear people speak Spanish, it sounds cool, it's masculine, it's romantic, and you go to Spain and they all speak with the lisp. ¿Cómo estás? Do you know why this happened? It was because one of the Spanish kings had a lisp, and he was very embarrassed by it, and he made it trendy. Yeah. No. So it became a trend. If you wanted to seem uppity in high society, you would speak Spanish with a lisp, and that's now why I think it's Castilian Spanish.
Yes,
I think that's what it
sounds
is.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds very gay.
Yeah, Mexicans sound a lot better.
Oh, it's so much better. It's like
they sound gangster as fuck.
It's gangster. It's romantic. It can be masculine. It can be very feminine. But like Spain Spanish is just like that king really did them all dirty.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what it is.
Barcelona, baby.
Barcelona.
That's right. Yeah. God damn it, all those Habsburgs inbreds fucking it up for everyone.
Terrible.
God bless America.
Terrible.
Spain, I guess. But anyway, so we got on this tangent talking about the Olmecs, though, so let's wrap that up.
Uh-huh.
We went through the heads and how that can't even be moved. But what years again were they existing? Just
so the Olmecs, this is the craziest conversation you and I have ever had.
No, it's great.
I'm loving it. So the Olmecs, they appear in the Coatzacoalcos River of central Mexico around the year 1800 BC. And they start with San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. They're erecting these huge heads, like from the very beginning of time. And there's no developmental period. They just, in the way that people often say that the Egyptians are just building the pyramids at the beginning of time, it's even more so true with the Olmecs. With the pyramids, there's a short developmental period. It's on like a 10 times scale. It goes like right. They very quickly go from building, large temples and mastaba tombs to boom, pyramids. But with the Olmecs, it literally begins with these giant heads and these huge altars and these other large monuments. There's so many monuments there that I don't think most people have ever even seen or heard of before. So for an unknown reason, San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan collapses or becomes abandoned, or the population gets smaller. It may actually be a result of what's it called? Like when you're so successful that it hurts you. I forget what the phrase for that is, but that Olmec society is just exploding, and they don't have enough land at San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan to sustain these people. So they leave, and the hub of Olmec society essentially moves to this place called La Venta. La Venta is essentially just a duplicate of San Lorenzo. Now,
what year are we in when they do that?
Now we're at about 1,000 to 500. So, I say a duplicate. Obviously, there must have been so many nuances and discrepancies between these eras. But now we're at La Venta, and we have more heads, but we also have more unique and different monuments at La Venta. This is actually where we get when I was talking to you about the lost city of the snake god, that book I want to write. This is actually where the first depiction of the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl comes from the Olmec world, actually. Most people don't realize that. But it's undoubtedly. And if you were to look this up, you could look up Monument. Is it Monument 19 or maybe it's Monument 13? Yeah. But Monument 13 might be the Traveler, but I think Monument 19 is the feathered serpent. So think about this. When I'm going to show you this, dude, this is the beginning of ancient Mexico, and they're able to carve artwork into this basalt is as hard as granite, by the way. Okay, there's no formative period that we have an archaeological record of that leads up to this, but they have this kind of aesthetic, this art style carved into the hardest stone available in their natural environment, a stone that can sometimes be as hard as granite. And the artwork looks like this at the beginning of time. At the beginning of time. This is so ancient that when the Aztecs migrated down into Mexico and invaded Mexico 3,000 years later, they perhaps did not even know who the Olmecs were, or even knew that the Olmecs ever existed at all. This is how ancient this is. This is happening from the very, very beginning of time. So then you have La Venta, and then eventually Olmec civilization begins slowly collapsing, as it's kind of like Egypt. Egypt arises, they have this, it's like this first primordial sea of darkness, like Neolithic prehistoric people, and then this spark of consciousness, right? It's like that's Egypt, and then Egypt rises up. And as Egypt rises, it pulls everyone up else around them, right? Like that influence of civilization influences everyone else, and everyone else rises. And over the course of several thousand years, these people become as powerful as Egypt, and Egypt's level kind of in the hierarchy kind of falls down. The same thing happens with the Olmecs. The Maya start rising alongside the Olmecs, and the Olmecs are trading with the Maya back and forth. And so as everyone starts to rise around the Olmecs essentially fall, collapse. Everything that made the Olmecs unique, rich, and successful, like their ability to fish and their ability to farm and sell maize crops, everyone else learned how to do this as well. And so their importance,
they get outflanked.
Essentially, yeah, their importance diminishes, and then they just dissolve into the rest of the Mesoamerican world. And then you have the Maya rising, the Zapotecs rising. Then you have Veracruz culture, which is the same bloodline as the Olmec people, but they're never as influential. And then over in the Mexican Valley, you have like the bubbling of Teotihuacán, of what will eventually be this great empire that tries to influence the Maya world, and then the Olmecs just disappear. And that's probably 500 to 200 BC, and we never see the Olmecs again. Yeah.
Whoa, way back.
Oh, way back.
So how long total you think they existed?
Earliest evidence is probably 2000 BC.
Whoa, so this is a borderline 2,000-year-old civilization, and yet
Yeah.
they've been gone for over 2,000 years.
Yes, yeah. So they existed for about. They definitely exist long before we have an archaeological record of them, right? Like that's kind of accepted everywhere. That every civilization that we know of probably existed long before we have a record of them, right? But at least by about 2000 BC is a safe bet. And then by 1800 BC, they're really starting to get going. By 1500 BC, full-blown civilization. By 1000, even twice as big. And then by 500, they're diminished. And by 0, they're gone. They've just disappeared and kind of been absorbed and dissolved into everything else around them. And then it's like as soon as they fall, the Maya rise. And this is why a lot of people think that the Maya are the direct descendants of the Olmecs, but they're not. And what's funny?
How do we know that? We have DNA proof of that?
No, I don't know if DNA proof or not. But you don't need DNA proof. So what's funny is I was with a group of my buddies and we were in my backyard, just sitting in the backyard, having a good time, smoking a joint and talking about the Maya and the Olmecs and
Caverns, you little badass.
And
smoking a joint.
And yeah, I never do it like for stupid fun. I always do it and then sit down and talk about ancient history because I feel like I'm going to get something from it. Sure enough, I had this realization why the Maya and the Olmecs are distinctly different from each other, and why the Maya and why the Olmecs are often called the mother culture of ancient Mexico. In some ways, that's kind of true, but they often think that the Maya are the direct descendants, but they're not. They're completely different. But the Maya were influenced and helped by the Olmecs. So people have often wondered why Maya civilization begins in the middle of the Petén jungle in Guatemala. It's the worst place that you could begin a civilization. It's kind of like being in the middle of the Amazon, right? Except it's even worse in the middle of Guatemala because there's not a major river next to you. The only thing you have are freshwater reservoirs, like swamps that are infested by these huge crocodiles and everything. So I'm trying to think of like the psychology behind why do people live there in the first place? Okay. In early prehistoric times, let's go back like 5000 BC, you already had people living in Mexico in what will become Mesoamerica, prehistoric Mesoamerica. And probably the prime real estate, if this is pre-agriculture, pre-farming maize, probably the prime real estate is along the coastlines because you can sail out, you can go fishing, you can catch fish. I mean, that seems to be the obvious real estate. It also must be incredibly violent, right? And so just like the Comanches who get beat up in, early pre-Columbian times and they get pushed into the Great Plains and the place with the worst real estate, probably there was a group of just Maya people who were very unequipped for warfare to be able to survive on the coastline. So they retreat into what is the worst real estate in all of Mesoamerica, which is in the center of the Petén jungle, where you have no freshwater running rivers. All you have is reservoirs and like the water table. So you dig this huge artificial lake and then the water seeps up out of the ground and that's your water, which wasn't really that healthy and it kind of causes problems maybe 1,000 years later or so. No more, maybe like 2,000 years later. But for a long time it was a mystery. Why did Maya civilization start in the middle of the Petén jungle in Guatemala, in the worst place? There are so many other places it could have began. And I realized it this one night when we were talking about it. The Olmecs were so wealthy, or let's go to about 1500 BC. The Olmecs are so wealthy that they're commissioning basalt to be brought in from the Sierra de la Tuxtla Mountains to their northwest, but that wasn't Olmec land necessarily. There was a different culture that was living there, and that was coring the stone and moving it for them, okay? They were also getting serpentine and jade. Serpentine and jade is not native to the Olmec realm. It comes from somewhere in the Maya realm. And so they were trading with the Maya people to get this jade. For a long time, nobody ever knew where the jade and the serpentine was coming from, because quarries are really hard to find, especially in the jungle. It's like this big crater in the ground, but then over thousands of years, it gets filled in with jungle and vegetation, and then it just becomes this little, it looks like a hill, right? Or it looks like two hills, and that's it. You can't even perceive it anymore. And so in the late 1900s, there were these expeditions that went out, and there was a book written called Stone of Kings, and they went looking for the serpentine and jade quarries. And sure enough, they come from the center of the Petén jungle. That's where they were at. And I haven't seen many Maya archaeologists expand much more on this other than saying, hey, this is where the jade quarries were, that the Maya were getting their jade. But they've never connected it to the Olmecs. But I'm like, the jade and serpentine is coming from the center of the Petén jungle. This wasn't started because the Maya were mining it to give it to themselves. They started it probably because the Olmecs were looking for it, found they liked these valuable green stones, and sought it out and sent expeditions into the Maya world, into the farthest, deepest depths of the jungle, where the poorest Maya people that were afraid of everyone else were living in the middle of the jungle, and said, you guys have access to this, mine this for us and give it back to us. And so from the center of the jungle, probably, like just the bitches of the Maya world that got pushed away from the coastlines, did not realize that they were sitting on top of an endless quarry of valuable green stone that the Olmecs wanted. So probably the Olmecs are trading with these people, and just like Teotihuacán made the Aztecs filthy rich, the Olmecs made the Maya in the center of the jungle filthy rich. So these people that were pushed away from the coastlines and forced to live in the center of the jungle were actually sitting on top of the jackpot. And that's why the major origin, the Fertile Crescent of the Maya world, emerges from the center of the jungle in the least hospitable place that they could have possibly been living. And that's exactly why. So it was the Olmecs fueling the Maya, and then the Maya emerge at a place called El Mirador. And the two,
like evolution in a weird, fucked up way.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen a Maya archaeologist acknowledge this or talk about this before. And what's crazy is this happens between 1000 BC and 200 BC. And so the two pyramids at El Mirador are called La Danta and El Tigre, and it's the two largest pyramids that the Maya will ever construct. They will never, ever build pyramids larger than the first two that they made. They'll never be... It's just like in Egypt. The original pyramids are the biggest and baddest. It's the same thing in the Maya world.
That's when the aliens were there.
That's when the aliens were there. And so, it's fascinating, man. And the pyramid at El Mirador is so large, to give you just an idea of...
That one on the right side, yeah.
Yeah, it's large. So that's the pyramid of El Mirador superimposed on top of the city of Tikal. So the pyramid of El Mirador is the size of the city of Tikal.
Look at the trees in comparison to that.
Oh, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Here's an idea of how big the pyramid at El Mirador is, La Danta and El Tigre. I walked all the way up the pyramid. It's a daunting walk. I'm completely exhausted. The Guatemalan jungle just zaps your strength. From the Amazon, like you just sweat like crazy. Yeah. You can't drink enough water to stay hydrated. It's just insane, So we spent some time up there taking some photos. We eat some lunch on top of the pyramid, take some photos of the jungle. It's super cool. Like, it's the only place I've ever been where I look off to every single horizon and it's nothing but jungle. It's the only place I've ever been like this.
You're just eating Taco Bell on top of this pyramid.
Yeah. I think I was eating an Uncrustable, actually. Two Uncrustables and some Oreos and a Fanta. You have to have Fanta in Latin America.
Fucking Mondelez is like Brandon, bitch.
Yeah, and so we walk back down the pyramid. I'm having a conversation with some of the people that are with me, and we walk steps. There are these on some of them there are wooden staircases that are built up to help, because they don't want you walking on the stone. And I mean, keep in mind, this is in the middle of the jungle that they built these wooden staircases on the side. It's crazy. And so we walk down, one level, walk across, down, another level, walk across, down. We get to the bottom of the pyramid. I'm walking along this path for like 5 minutes or so, having a conversation about El Mirador and how far out here we are. And it's just unbelievable. We're here in the middle of there's another step down. So I had been walking on the pyramid for 5 minutes after I thought I was at the bottom, walking forward on the platform.
You almost toppled over.
And then I reached the next descent down to the
Wow.
bottom of the pyramid. It's absolutely massive. And what they didn't realize until just within the last few decades or so is that when you actually get down to the real bottom of the pyramid, you can walk then for another mile to get to the pyramid across the way, and they directly face each other. But that path that you're walking on is actually a platform that's raised up off the ground, and the entire city, including both of the pyramids, sits on top of a man-made platform in the middle of the jungle. Oh, it's insane, dude. It's just... Actually, if you were ever to come to a cool place, like, you should come to Guatemala, and you and I should just fly in a helicopter to El Mirador. Like, it's something that's...
I don't do helicopters, but I'll definitely go there.
I'll show you a video or something. Or maybe I'll send you the video. You can put it in.
Yeah,
your
that
notes.
looks sick.
It's one of those things where you're out there and you're kind of like you were saying that when you're in the Amazon, it is bigger than you can comprehend. It's one of the wonders of the world, right? Like El Mirador, Morgan Freeman, when he went, he thought that El Mirador should be added to one of the wonders of the world, because when you're there walking around,
that's God saying.
it's God saying.
Yeah.
When you're there walking around, it is truly mind-blowing. Like, you're looking at the size of it, and you walk down the bottom platform and you think about this entire city is artificial. They're not using the natural terrain because the jungle is flat. Everything there is raised up off of the ground. It's mind-blowing, dude. And you think about, okay, these guys started doing this in the middle of the jungle around 800 BC.
It's inconceivable. It's completely inconceivable. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And like you said, when you go out to these places, obviously I haven't been to Guatemala, but I've been in the middle of the Amazon jungle. It's different, but similar kind of vibe. You're a speck in the middle of this.
You are, man.
Voraciously growing on top of itself ecosystem. You're just like, with everything we have now, you can't even get cops out there or the army out there. There's no laws.
No,
Imagine it back then.
Yeah, there's nothing out there.
I mean, it's like...
And the other thing that's crazy is I realized the distance. So being there, it's one of the only times you get to see the ancient world mostly untouched. Like, some of that city is excavated, but there is no... Maybe there's one or two structures in that entire city that's completely excavated, because there's a camp out there, but you have to get there by helicopter. So there's like maybe...
Oh, you have to take a helicopter?
Or you walk for 3 days to get there.
Yeah, I'll do the walk for 3 days.
3
That's
days
fun. Yeah.
That'd still be fun to do. Yeah. And during that 3-day walk, when you camp, you're stopping at other cities that are in the jungle. So there's campsites set up at just these ruins. Cities, full-on cities in the middle of the jungle. You got to walk basically from one horizon to the next every day. And what I've realized when I was out there was that you can actually kind of predict the proximity. Like, if you're looking for a lost city, they're all within the horizon's radius of each other. Like, if you're in one city, you can see another city. If you're standing on top of the pyramid, just scan the horizon and you'll see it, boop, and you keep going around and you'll see another, boop, and they're all a horizon's distance away from each other.
Wow.
That has to be strategic. It has to be like, so you can do smoke signals, or you can do fires in the
military
night,
bases.
and you can
Yeah. Yep.
you can send signals to each other. So it has to be this interconnected web of cities. Actually, in the Inca world, I was surprised to find when I was there last month, it's exactly the same. You can find, this is so cool. Okay, so Machu Picchu, I mean, you've seen Machu Picchu. It's sitting up on top of this spine of this mountainside.
I flew over that. Yeah.
You what?
Yeah, I had to fly from... Where the hell was I? But when I was flying to see Paul inland, I flew over those mountains and everything.
Yeah.
I haven't been there, but
Yeah.
seen it.
It's amazing, dude. It's just one of those places you got to go to. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this, there's a young archaeologist who's maybe like my age or so. And I was asking him, I was like, okay, so on these other mountainsides that are near us, because, you know, it's this steep mountain and then the other mountains come up and it's just like this out in the Andes. It's crazy with rivers running through it. And I say, okay, on this mountain next to us, is there anything over there? Have they ever found any ruins over there? And they're like, oh, yeah. There's some vestiges over there. And I was like, vestiges? What do you mean? And he was like, oh, I don't know. They're like forts, like lookout points. And then I was like, do you think that they were sending fire signals back and forth, like throughout the mountains? Like, do you think that they could bounce fire signals to try to get messages across? And the guy was like, well, I mean, they found single buildings on mountainsides before. And I was like, so theoretically, if you were to go looking through the jungles that's up on top of these mountains, which is like extremely treacherous, there's a 50% chance you would die trying to go do this. And I was like, but do you think that they had vestiges on the mountainsides where if something's happening at Machu Picchu and you needed Cusco to find out, rather than having a sprinter or somebody, walking to send a message, could you just you could bounce a signal through the mountains
genius.
to get there? And then the guy was like, well, maybe you could. I started looking into it, and this was something that Hiram Bingham thought as well. He was finding little things, and so
you're like having a Dr. House moment over here where he like looks up like, I got it.
Oh, it's crazy. And so I'm seeing a similarity here between the Inca sending fire signals, and then they must always have things within a certain proximity of each other to be able to communicate instantly. I mean, like that's like communicating at light. That's like communicating at cell phone speed compared to walking. Me sending a letter to you, and so there's got to be different. When I was at El Mirador, that's where the idea happened that there must be a pattern of where the cities are built, and you could probably create a web and estimate the proximity. Like wherever you're at, if you want to try to find a city, you could go on a map and draw out the horizon from one single area. And if you were going to go look for a city, you go roughly to that horizon and follow in a circular path around. You just orbit around one city and just keep following that horizon of your central city, and you'll probably come across something. That would be.
That's insane.
I just spilled the sauce for people looking for lost cities.
No, but that's actually insane.
Yeah. So
they could come up with stuff like this.
Wild, man. Well, and I thought about that a lot. Like, they're really into sacred geometry, and they understand gosh dang, what's the ratio? Was it like
Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah, the Fibonacci sequence
Fibonacci
and everything,
sequence.
and the ratio like 1.018 or something like that.
Yes.
The Maya figured this out in their own unique way by
Before Da Vinci, so this is the Maya doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There were lots of cultures that figured this out because this is the language that permeates reality. Like even if all of humanity died to the next COVID 3.0 or something, and there was just the Amazonians left, the uncontacted tribes, the descendants of those people would eventually figure out the Fibonacci sequence. It's just one of these things that permeates reality. Everyone can discover it if you poke at reality long. Like if you stare into the abyss enough, you'll figure out the code to the universe. So the Maya did it as well. And the thing I've thought about is, man, there must have been people who were just as intelligent, if not vastly more intelligent than Einstein himself, in the ancient Maya realm, who sit around and thought about their natural world on a level and a certain depth that just, okay, think about this. If your whole purpose was to sit out in a garden and think about the world around you, and everyone else just took care of you.
You'd come up with a lot of shit. Yeah.
You'd be the insights you would have would be totally insane. Like I heard somebody talk about this the other day. I think this is something that's kind of going viral on like self-help Instagram. And this guy was like, if you want any solution to your problem, you've probably seen this. He said, if you want any solution to your problem, the secret is to go sit in a room by yourself in peace and quiet and do nothing for 30 minutes.
Also the hardest thing for a man to do.
Exactly. He was like, just do that. Well, my mind, being an ancient historian, is I think ancient people were a lot more prone to that. Just thinking, A perfect example is, man, growing up in East Texas, dude, we had to rake leaves so much.
I feel your pain there. Yes.
Unbelievable,
I had to grow up doing that.
Dude. Like unbelievable. I was raking, and we had 7 acres, man. And I would spend like 24 hours or, at least 10 hours a day on my Saturday and Sunday raking leaves. And I hated every second of it. And to help pass the time,
Put it on the tarp and take it back somewhere.
oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And to pass the time, I would put my headphones in and like listen to music or, you know, listen to like YouTube videos on my phone or something. And that helped me pass the time. Ancient people did not have that luxury. They're
They had to
sitting
pass the
there
time with their thoughts.
thinking.
Yep.
They're white knuckling it and thinking. So think about how much more they just thought and existed in their world than we do. We kind of just ignore our world.
There's something to be said for that, though, Luke.
Yeah.
We have all these distractions now in our world. Every little thing is one click away. You know, you talk to anyone, they're like, oh, I'm so busy. I say it, you say it, right? But a lot of the busyness, especially, not to call out people who don't have their own business, but, you know, especially when you're working for something else, right? That's not yours. Like a lot of it has to do with the distractions to get you away from the annoying toil sometimes of a job that you don't like if you have a job like that. And then you have people, like we have a lot of fans of the show who love their job and, you know, they're out building things, right? Like I have a lot of fans who are like carpenters and stuff like that. And so, you know, they get lost in building something for 12 hours, but at least they have a ride along, right? They have this show and some other shows to kind of entertain them along the way. But that in and of itself is at least curating content for you to think about. These people, none of that was even in their lexicon as an option. They didn't have the temptation of saying, you know what, I think I'm just going to listen to music for 12 hours today. Or I think I'm just going to go enjoy this thing to kind of get that dopamine hit while I'm doing it. They had to create their dopamine hit, to your point, of like, all right, what is happening around me? Because by the way, I can't even forget Google. I can't even take out a textbook and figure this shit out. We haven't written any of this stuff down. I have to like look at it and understand. And it reminds me of like Paul's team down in the Amazon, JJ and all those guys. And obviously they have tech, they're connected to the real world, but they grew up in the jungle. Those motherfuckers can hear a bird from 3 miles away and not only know what kind of bird it is and how high altitude it is at that time, they know what it's saying and they can talk back to it. I watched them do it. That sounds unbelievable, but like
I believe it.
It's incredible, and it's because they lived in it.
Yeah.
They were among it. They weren't distracted by other things. Like trying to explain to JJ, who's like a literal genius, who Elon Musk was, it was fucking hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious because there's no concept of that. And it's like he knows what Starlink is because he uses that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he's like, wow, thanks, Elon Musk, if that's who it was who made it. But like in his world, it's just he's
just
out there
even-
with
doesn't even
nature and
exist.
so connected. And you feel like when you talk with him about any of this stuff, you feel like you're talking to a sensei, and you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about Paul's guy, JJ, who I mentioned, but like, you know, JJ's the co-founder of the whole organization down there with Paul and is unbelievable, but like, he's on another level. And also, not for nothing, whatever that clarity is that he has, that he's developed from his life of really being in touch with everything around him, makes him exude a level of charisma that I have never been around. Natural, quiet, unassuming charisma that strikes your soul. That's how I would describe it. Like he's next level.
It's a different kind of human you're interacting with. Yeah. It's like in a way, you are a European meeting a Native American. In a certain way.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is he a native guy?
Yeah,
I mean, he must be. Yeah.
Of
So
course.
you're having a similar experience, right? Where they have these admirable traits about them that come about through a much more holistic lifestyle.
Yes.
You know, just utterly, completely alternate to our reality. Have you ever noticed? This is something I think about a lot. Is like my wife and I will talk about how smart our dog is. Like he just
What kind of dog you have?
Texas cur, blackmouth cur. The same. So in the movie Old Yeller, they don't actually use a blackmouth cur, but the actual book is written about the kind of dog that we have. It's like all American, bred by Native Americans, pre-colonial dog. Really, really smart dog, and So, but we always talk about like how well he can read body language, and he's aware of every little sound outside of our house. He's aware of things that like I don't perceive. You know what I mean? And that's because he doesn't have a phone. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't have anything distracting him. He lives in his reality, and he's just tuned into it. And we're so like desensitized and tuned out of our reality. We would be just as aware, if not 10 times more aware than a dog might be. You know, we're just obviously vastly more intelligent, but we're able to like turn off parts of our brains as well. And you can just imagine like uncontacted tribes who live in the Amazon, or, you know, like this guy you're talking about, he's just perceptive of things that's
correct.
None of us are perceptive of. I mean, imagine how much of your brain power is taken up by thinking about the intricacies of, like, you know, the YouTube world and this modern media, this modern media industry that we're kind of climbing our way up through, and you have to be attuned to it, and you have to kind of be aware of what's going on and knowing the things to say and the things you shouldn't say and the things you should stay away from. It's like, well, that's just akin to surviving in the Amazon, but our Amazon is this thing.
That's right.
But it's also kind of dystopian because this isn't what our biology was meant to be interacting with.
These
right?
fluorescent lights and all that. It doesn't make any sense. But I see how easily your body would just like it adapts to our modern day environment, how it would adapt to that kind of environment being born in it. Like JJ's been there his whole life. He's 50 years old, right? Mm-hmm. I was there for the better part of 2 weeks. And one of the things I did, I never took my phone out. This was May 2024. It was the first time in over 4 years of doing it at the time that I took any time off. And I was like, I'm doing this the right way. There's no phone coming out. I'm just going to live out there. And it's a very microscopic example compared to a guy who lived 50 years out there, obviously. It's a blink of a moment in time. But my sensory awareness by the end of that trip was turned up just a little bit. Not you know, it wasn't this like enlightening, like unbelievable, like, oh my God, I can feel everything, or not like that, but just a little bit where you've been removed for just a long enough time from real society that you get a little bit more in touch with just nature and Mother Nature herself. And it was a beautiful thing, and that's why I don't care if it's the Amazon or whatever. There's some amazing places around this world, obviously most of which I haven't been to, but you know, if you can get out and go off the grid a little bit for a couple weeks and do something like that, I can't recommend that enough, because it's, especially in our click world, it's very useful.
Yeah. The other thing I think is euphoric is you know, so it's been over a year since I was in a situation similar to that, where I'm really out there in the jungle. I mean, like, I've been out to Machu Picchu. Well, I mean, I was at El Mirador, but I'm talking about for an extended period of time, days on end. You know, right. When I went out to El Mirador, it was a full day, but I came back and I slept in a hotel that night. And because I study Mesoamerica, there's not a whole lot of reason. It's not like South America where you need to be out in the jungle for multiple days at a time because it's so remote. In Mesoamerica, you can kind of dip your toe in and come right back out. There's really no reason to camp out in the wilderness, right? And so it's mostly day excursions. But a little over a year ago, I did an expedition in Campeche, and man, we were out for days.
Campeche?
Campeche, it's a state in Mexico.
Okay.
And we were out in the Campeche jungles, and we were sleeping in tents on this little this local Maya camp site. And man, I know you know, it is so euphoric. It's like a religious experience. And also, I think the added element of the danger of being out there is also especially euphoric. Like, it's like a trade-off. You're there. Thrill. Yeah, it's a thrill, and it's euphoric, and it makes you feel very much alive in a way that you're not usually. I think it's like what video games try to emulate.
Yeah.
You know, video games try to simulate stakes, and that's why people get addicted to it. And you know, all it's doing is simulating a bunch of dudes getting together and going off in the jungle and hunting down an animal and killing it. And, you know, and it's like, that's a dangerous thing to do. There's lots of elements, things that could kill you, but if you can achieve that and do it successfully with your buddies, it's completely euphoric.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, how unhealthy is it that we don't have that anymore?
Well, we're evolutionarily wired to be drawn to things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's like you're on guard and you're also about that shit. You know what I mean? Not to overstate it and be like the dude that just wants to run and be hard, but I'm saying like it's a cool experience knowing that there's the unknown little traps of nature out there that, you know, respectfully, we ain't getting here in New York.
Yeah, for sure.
Really cool. But yo, man, I got to get you to your flight. It's gonna be popping
This was a
out
pleasure
of here.
doing this. This is a pleasure doing this.
It's
again.
always great. We've done 5 of these. We did 175 and 176, and I think we did 271 and 272 together. But you know, your knowledge is incredible. It gets better every time. So love doing these, and we will do it again soon, my man.
Yes, sir. We will. Thank you.
All right. And we'll have your links down below to your YouTube. Everyone go check that out and subscribe. Everyone go follow you on Instagram as well. We'll have that link. And, you know, you get daily content just like this, and you get weekly content on YouTube with full video breakdowns by the man in front of us. So enjoy, everybody.
Cool.
All right,
bro.
You know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.